No.
If you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and start my introduction since it's 5:30 and we should now be streaming on all of the city's streaming channels and channel 10. My name is Robert Watkins. I'm city staff and I'll be moderating tonight's meeting. Welcome to the January 2021 Charlottesville Board of Architectural Review virtual meeting. Before I hand things over to Carl Schwartz, our chair, I'm just going to go over a few guidelines in this introduction. For everybody who might be watching at home, I'll introduce the meeting participants who are online right now. First, we have Carl Schwartz, who is the BAR chair. We're also joined by Brett Gastinger, vice chair. Other BAR members include Tim Moore, Jody Lehendro, Sherry Lewis, Ron Bailey, James Zemer, and Andy McClure. And we're also joined by Jeff Werner, who is my colleague and city staff. Throughout the meeting, various applicants and other participants will join the meeting and leave the meeting as necessary. For members of the public who are on the call right now, who are interested in providing comment at any portion of the meeting, there are several places in the agenda where you can speak. At the beginning of the meeting, we allow time for comments from the public for items not on the agenda. Then, before the BAR deliberates on each individual application, we allow time for public comment. In order to provide comment, we ask that you register for the meeting if you haven't already. You can do this through the city calendar on the city website. And then when we get to the specific comment portion of the agenda, you can raise your hand using the raise hand feature in the participant list, and I will unmute you. Or if you're calling in, you can press *9. Then the timer will begin and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. For applicants who are already online, you're currently in the meeting as an attendee, which means you have limited audio and video capabilities. When your project comes up on the agenda for review, I'll promote you to panelist, so then you'll be able to mute and unmute as necessary, and we can see you. And when I promote you from attendee to panelist, you'll be booted out of the meeting temporarily, and then you'll automatically come in as a panelist again. Also for applicants, during the staff and applicant presentations for each project, I'll be sharing my own screen to scan through pages of your application that you submitted for visual aid. While the BAR deliberates, I'm happy to share my screen again to reference specific pages or drawings. To applicants or BAR members, if you'd like me to go to a specific page, please give me a verbal command to direct me to the specific page number. Also, we might have short periodic breaks as necessary, and our chair, Carl, will direct us to when a break is necessary. Finally, it's time for me to hand things over to Carl, but please, throughout the meeting, feel free to ask me any questions for guidance if you need things. Thanks.
Robert, you ever consider working for an airline? I feel like I'm about to take off on an airplane.
We'll see.
All right, so welcome everyone to the regular monthly meeting of the Charlottesville Board of Architectural Review. Staff will introduce each item, followed by the applicant's presentation, which should not exceed 10 minutes. I will then ask for questions from the public, followed by questions from the BAR. After questions are closed, I'll ask for comments from the public. For each application, members of the public are each allowed 3 minutes to ask questions and 3 minutes to offer comments. Speakers shall identify themselves and provide their address. Comments should be limited to the BAR's purview, that is regarding only the exterior aspects of the project. Following the BAR's discussion and prior to taking action, the applicant will have up to 3 minutes to respond. Thank you for participating. Please note that the times given on our agenda are estimates only. All right, so right now we have matters from the public not on the agenda, and I should note that this also includes any item on the consent agenda, which tonight is the application for 3 Gildersleeve Wood. I should also note that, sorry.
I was just going to add as well that 612 West Main has been pulled from tonight's agenda. So that won't be discussed. If you would like to provide comment for items that are not on the agenda, please use the raise hand feature, or press *9 if you're calling in. Looking at the list, Carl, I don't see any raised hands.
I guess we have BAR preservation awards tonight. Jeff, or do we not?
So, Carl, what I was saying is earlier,
Oh, sorry.
if you and Robert talked, it would be nice to just say that we these were reviewed last year. Read through each of them and who will be awarded to, and that we'll be that way it's in the record and we can send those out. Given that we're not in person, it's kind of difficult to have any kind of a presentation anyway. So
we're gonna have somebody sing.
Possibly, they're on their way.
Either J-Lo or Lady Gaga. So,
Right.
And Robert can MC it.
That's right.
Yeah.
He's got it all covered.
They're a little busy today.
Yeah. Carl, I can send you the list in a moment if you need to find it again.
Yes, please, because I'm not sure that.
Okay. Yeah. Give me a moment as well. Sure.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Sure. I'll pull it up for you in the meantime.
Right, thank you. I'm sorry about that. Yeah,
No,
I saw that on there. I didn't remember seeing a. Anyways, next item is the consent agenda. That includes the BAR minutes from September 15th, 2020, as well as 3 Gildersleeve Wood. And I should note that for 3 Gildersleeve Wood, there was an error in the application. The site plan has been amended. The deck is on the back of the house, as the staff report says. Do we have anyone who wants to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll call a vote. Mr. Bailey,
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. McClure,
Aye.
Mr. Moore,
I was just gonna say aye, but one thing, there are a couple oddball typos that I can point out to you later. They're not worth discussing right now.
Okay, if you send them our way afterwards.
Yep.
So yeah, that was an aye. Mr. Zemer, Mr. Lehendro,
Aye.
Mr. Gastinger,
Aye.
and Miss Lewis.
Aye.
Thank you. That's 8 ayes.
Dotted.
It's going to be a long night.
Yeah.
The troops are randy.
Yeah. Carl, I'm sorry. I'm still working on pulling up the list. So,
Well, I mean, we can do this next month. Is that all right?
Jeff.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Aww.
Or if we
I like the
maybe we
award.
can slip it in after the next item. I don't want to make Robert search through all his emails, and I definitely don't want to search through mine. So the next item on the agenda, a new item, is 125 Chancellor Street is a demolition.
Sure. And I'm going to go ahead and promote Bob and Khan because they'll be representing this project. Actually, you know what? I haven't been given host privileges yet, so I don't have that privilege. Joe, if you're online right now, can you please make me a host? In the meantime, I guess Jeff can go ahead and start his staff report.
I can. So, sorry, I've got things happening on my screen that I don't need. All right. So, good evening, everybody. This is 125 Chancellor Street, and just everyone out there listening, this is the request because there's a demolition portion that it's large enough that the demolition is treated under a separate certificate of appropriateness, a COA, by the BAR. So we will first be discussing the demolition request. which is for the portion at the rear of the house. BAR will have that, take action on that, and then followed up by the discussion for the proposed new work on the house. So, and both will be, will follow the same steps, but if I know there may be people that wish to speak tonight, you can choose which one, or you can certainly speak at both. This is again a COA request for 125 Chancellor Street. This is the COA request for the demolition at a rear wing of the house. The house was constructed in 1898. It's a Victorian style building, features several East Lake and Queen Anne decorative motifs, such as the mock half timbering in the front gable and brackets beneath the oversailing front eave. There was an addition to the rear, not the rear, in addition to what is there, was constructed around 1952. There is a garage in the back northwest corner that will be removed as part of this project, but however, that's non-contributing, and the BAR won't be taking action on that. So I have, in reviewing it, as in my discussion, the construction of the new addition will extend the use of the historic building. And with that work, will facilitate the building being getting some much needed rehabilitation and repair. The historic rear wing is likely original. However, extension alterations at the very least would be necessary to incorporate it into the proposed rear addition. And just to be clear, so we're talking about a new addition. That work requires the removal of the 1952 addition and this rear wing that we believe was original. So, and I said, in lieu of using the existing wing to connect the house and the addition, constructing a wider hyphen will more effectively and efficiently meet the fraternity programmatic needs. And what they're looking to do is not have an addition that's accessed through just a small hallway, but something that's incorporating the larger house. The staff supports the approval of the COA request and recommends the following as condition: that as we do with most demolitions that provide for the BAR archives, a documentation of the rear elevation. That would be just a sketch of all the sides of it, including some photographs and measured draw elevations and floor plans. And I can, well, actually, Design Build sort of established our standard with what they did over there on Virginia Avenue, so they're familiar with that. I did go through the criteria for demolition and offered my answers on each of the questions. So if you have any about that, we certainly can refer to it. But with that, I'll send this to the BAR. And do you have any questions for me? And otherwise, you can hand it over to the applicant.
And I can happily say that I am host now, so I will promote Con and Bob, so they'll be able to present.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Nice to see everyone again. I think Bob is running a little late. He had to go home and feed his kids. Robert, we also have Kendra Patricks from Line and Grade, our civil engineer, that would like to join. I think he'll be important on the second half when we talk about the addition and design. Thank you, Jeff, for putting us first so I can get out of here and go see the inaugural concert in time. Anyway, so I think Jeff worded it very succinctly and very nicely that we are requesting to remove this rear portion. We did look at it initially to see if we can incorporate it. However, there's a couple limiting factors that preclude us from being able to do that. One, the second floor of that rear addition extension is 16 inches lower than the rest of the second floor. It steps down. So for us to be able to keep that, we require a lot of restructuring, removing the floor joists, raising the floor, and then by that time, the head height will be affected. And then the other limiting factor is we have to add this parking lot in the back that has to meet city standards. So with all the drive aisles and parking lots, it really encroaches on how much area we have in the back to add this addition beyond just the setback. So unfortunately, we're hoping that we can take it down and then respectively, add an addition in the back that, complements the front. We also feel that, since it is on the rear, it's not really seen from the street. And taking it down, it won't affect the historic character of the remaining buildings much.
Is that it, Con?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions from the public? Please raise your hand or press *9.
Looking at the list, I don't see any raised hands, Carl.
Okay. And silly question for my own, to raise your hand, it's under the participant tab, or where is that hiding?
If you go to participants, and I think you can click, it should be to the right of your name.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any questions from the BAR?
I have a question for staff, I guess for Jeff. I just want to clarify, because this is a partial demolition, that the guideline A6 is really the only one that directly applies to a partial demolition, which addresses any remaining features. Are there any other guidelines that we have that would give us some guidance in a partial demolition? Or is this something that Carl Schwartz would like to get to work on in revising our guidelines sometime soon?
It's a that's why, sorry, I'm going up and down the wrong staff report. So the references to question A6. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much verbatim, and I think it's the idea of that when you do have and the criteria for demolition, no, it doesn't sort of separate out, entire building or part of the building or a little bit of the building. But the way I looked at it was, given the 3 sides that will remain and the unique features of this building, would removing this roughly 8 by 15 piece on the rear, would we see a significant loss and deterioration of the character? And I didn't see that we would. That's how I looked at it. But no, there's nothing really else. This is it, what we have to refer to.
Thank you.
It does seem that there are actually sort of 2 levels of demolition here too, because the porch is really more about reconstruction, because it's in bad repair, it's not being obliterated in the same sense that the rest of it is, right?
Yeah, well, I'm not looking at the COA. I'm not looking at the porch reconstruction as part of the demo COA. The demolition COA, I'm singly looking at the rear.
Okay.
But I see your point. I mean, it could be, but that's how I was approaching it.
I think the difference is only the porch is being rebuilt in kind.
Right. We're not removing it and moving on.
All right. Are there any comments from the public? Please use the raise your hand feature or press *9.
Again, looking at the list, I don't see any raised hands.
All right. Comments from the BAR? Or if anyone wants to make a motion?
I'll go back to the porch for a minute, which I know Bob knows I'm obsessed with the porch. It would seem to me, since they have to take it down to rebuild it, that at the time, a little forensic exploration there behind, when you go do the siding in there and just see if there's any indication of its original attachment to the building. It just bugs me having it project out past, because it just feels to me like that one gable should really be primary, and the porch really competes with it, and it just seems out of scale to me.
We do have information that acknowledges this porch was reconstructed, and the Sanborn maps support that. So there was there's acknowledgement in the historic survey of that difference in character and style, but it appears to have been done very early in the 20th century. So the sort of way brings in that question of it may not be original, but it certainly is old.
Right.
Tim, I think we're going to talk about that with the next.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Well, I'm just thinking more about if it's coming down at the same time as the rest of it, I would just request that there's some attention paid to, when they start to uncover it, do they find anything? That's all.
But that, strictly speaking, is not part of the demolition that we're considering, right?
Correct.
But it is being demolished. I mean, I agree with Mr. Moore. That porch is going to be demolished unless the applicant's telling us they're leaving significant features of it. It seems like it's being changed quite a bit.
And this is just a technicality, I think, that we're arguing over, is that we can talk about it once we get past this. The demolition application only concerns the back. Jeff has put the porch into the next application because it's being rebuilt in kind, so you don't have to approve it as a demolition. That was all that. If we want to talk about it now, you guys are free to, but it's going to come up in the next application.
Why don't we deal with the demolition part first, and then we'll get to the porch in the next COA, which is coming up later.
I think that would be expedient.
I guess my concern still is that there is a demolition being done to the porch. So if we go on, it's fine that it's not discussed here. We can talk about the demolition of the rear, but there is demolition being done, and it should be discussed, and there should be a separate vote to demolish a very historic feature on this property.
There will be a separate vote, as I understand it.
But there should be two separate votes, one for
That's right.
the addition, one for the demolition of that feature. I mean, are we all on the same page? Am I just stating the obvious?
We're on the same page.
Sort of, but it's not because it's being rebuilt in kind, and they are trying to tell us that they're going to rebuild it exactly as it is. It's a different animal. It's like replacing a roof or replacing a window, which we don't. It is just a different procedure, I think, is how we've handled it in the past.
Yeah, I don't think.
But I get what you're saying. Yes, it is a demolition, but it's going to be replaced exactly as it is, which I think is the difference here.
Is it exactly? I mean, I wouldn't imagine that it's in poor condition, so I hope it's not being replaced with the same materials exactly as it is. I mean, I don't think that's the intention of the applicant. And I'm sorry to be difficult here, but I do think there's a demolition, and our guidelines don't actually say that that a demolition, an exception from a demolition is where something is being replaced. I agree, it's not a window, it's not a simple feature, but rather it's a significant feature that's being demolished. I mean, I think we're entitled to look at it along with the replacement that's being presented, but I agree with Mr. Moore.
I don't think it limits our discussion of it at all. I just think the way that the applications have been presented, we should get past this one and then bring it up in the next section.
All right. So we have a procedural thing that we should probably discuss soon, but let's.
I'm happy to make a motion on this. Having considered the standards set forth in the city code, including city design guidelines for demolitions, I move to find that the proposed selective demolition at 125 Chancellor Street, and in particular of the rear original wing and the more modern 1960s addition, satisfies the BAR criteria and is compatible with this property and other properties in this district, and the BAR approves the application as submitted.
Second.
Do we want to add the proviso about the providing documentation of them?
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment to my motion.
Okay, I'll call a vote. Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Lehendro,
Aye.
Mr. Zemer,
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. McClure,
Aye.
Mr. Gastinger,
Aye.
Miss Lewis,
Aye.
and Mr. Bailey.
Yes.
Thank you. It's approved with a vote of 8-0.
All right. And just again, be clear, on this one, if the board relative to the porch, the board can deny replacement of the porch, which is in essence, denying its removal or demolition. So it's so if there are constraints that you all would like to discuss for the porch that can be incorporated to a motion or a reason for denial. So again, this is the second COA for 125 Chancellor Street. This is a COA request for the new addition, renovation, rehabilitation of the existing house, and there is some related site work involved. Again, house was constructed in 1888. It is contributing in the corner ADC district. There was a preliminary, the BAR held a preliminary discussion of the proposed work back in November, and the applicant took that information and has brought forward this this formal request. Again, I will note that the existing garage in the back corner is not contributing. So and they are removing it. That's not being addressed in this request or in the COA. The proposed improvements and materials I've laid out in the site plan are in the staff report. One correction, that there had been discussion of possibly requiring, and this is not BAR or but the city ADA review. There was discussion of possibly requiring an ADA accessible ramp in the front. That has been addressed, and so it won't be necessary, and the ADA ramp at the side will facilitate those requirements. As I noted in the staff report, much of the preliminary discussion, and I think it was in November, not December, but most of that discussion focused on the front porch, particularly its origin. I note that we reviewed the available information, and while the current porch is stylistically different from the house, it does likely date to the early 20th century. And in fact, there's from the 1996 DHR reconnaissance level survey, the note is that the porch may have been rebuilt. Originally, it was probably stylistically in keeping with the house. And the present colonial revival porch, the one we see now, appears to be the same size as the original, but was probably added in the early 20th century. There are some notes I've made about what we should be primarily focusing on, the work and repairs that are proposed. We always welcome that in a building, though I know there's some aluminum siding involved, that probably some discussion on that is necessary. And then I offer some, I think it's 5 points. If the COA is approved, staff recommends the consideration of these as conditions. One, that the cement board siding on the addition and any aluminum siding would be smooth, no faux grain. That there is, and I saw in the photographs, there's a tremendous amount of old wires, conduit, boxes, phones, cables, etc. That those would be removed to the extent that they're no longer being used. There's a lot of vegetation, excess vegetation at the site. Don't necessarily want to see it bush hogged, but there are I think some selective cleaning up that could be done. And there appears to be a metal fence at the front along that low wall that does show up in historic photographs. So we'd probably like to see that retained. Again, there's trimming and pruning. There does, I think, probably 1 or 2 invasive trees in there. And then this goes to the similar to what what Mr. Moore was talking about. But when the aluminum siding is removed, it would be nice for at least for the BAR record to have, you know, photographs of what's below, and this would not to be for us to say, hey, we want you to make it look like that. But if that is being removed, it is an opportunity to see, you know, get a snapshot of possibly what that original material looked like, and the trim, et cetera. And then I think the comment was made about adding something about recording existing conditions at the front porch in any sort of selective demolition. So with that, I'll hand it off back to you all, and the applicant's ready. And if you have questions for me, otherwise, it's Carl, it's yours.
Well, yeah, it's the applicant. Colin or Bob, do you guys have anything to say?
And I can go to any page in the PDF if you need me to.
Sure. I think there's a few site issues we'd like to discuss with you. Jeff had mentioned that wrought iron short, low fence on the front and the low wall. Previously, we had mentioned that the city was requiring us to put in a new hydrant, and the location of it might affect some of the wall. Kendra, our civil engineer, is here, and I think she could speak better about it. Robert, can you go back to the site plan? Okay.
Okay, thank you. So we received comments after our last submission with showing the fire hydrant and the removal of a small portion of the wall. And now they are also requiring that the new water meter be placed behind the sidewalk, and that will also need a public utility easement around it, and the wall can't be within that easement. So now it's looking like a span of about 15 feet where the wall will need to be removed or jogged around all of the utilities. So, you know, before it was just this small area, now it's growing, and I'd like to know how we should address that. If it's worth to maintain the wall or remove it entirely.
We can make that part of our discussion. Do you guys have anything else that you wish to add?
No, I think that was it. You know, luckily we had them agree that we don't have to put an ADA ramp in the front, so that was good. It's a lot of hard work, but we got them to agree to our stance.
What's the nature of that retaining wall in the front, and do we have any pictures of it without it being covered up with vegetation?
I believe maybe in the city's historical survey, there was one fuzzy photo that showed it. Robert, I don't know if you have that or not.
It appears to be just a low concrete covered wall. My assumption, and I actually saw it in a go to Google Drive, and I went back in time. Not dissimilar to what we've seen in other places, though it is very low.
It only holds about a foot of dirt, so it's not so much necessary as for aesthetics.
Well, are you guys just so I can keep this moving, are you done with your presentation?
No.
No. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, if you just go down to the elevation, Robert. So, you know, last time, as Jeff mentioned, we did focus a lot on the porch, and I'm sure we'll discuss it a lot more tonight. But you know, our stance is that you know, we know that the original porch was different and probably better in scale, proportions to the house. However, you know, we have no documentation of what it looked like, and our stance is, with historical structures, you shouldn't make something up. It's probably better that, we know what this was here now. This is an old porch from probably 1920s, and we can recreate that in kind. Although, the board has expressed, that they like the maybe the original version, which is closer to the house. We just don't feel that it's right to fabricate something that we don't know what it looks like. And then if you go to the south elevation, next elevation, last time there was some comments regarding the addition and its elevation to try to make it a little more playful and whimsical. So we did address that. What we did was we created, double hung windows. So they kind of have the same proportions as the front of the house with the shutters. And then we also brought the eave line down closer to the front house. We also separated that rear addition porch away from the house. So then the seam between the two houses reads more clearly that there is a clear change between old and new. So those are the major changes that we addressed from the last review. That's it.
Great, thank you guys. All right, are there any questions from the public? Please use the raise your hand feature or press *9.
It doesn't look like there's anybody.
Great. All right, questions from the BAR?
So, the eave line of the addition on that last image you showed, it looked like it was a little bit above the roof line of the original house, but on some of the other renderings, it looked like it was lower, and I just wanted clarity on exactly where it's going to end up.
The renderings are accurate. I think it's a little deceptive because the addition is pushed back from the other face. So in perspective, it brings it down.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about. But thank you, that makes sense.
I have a question about the site. So the water meter, you said there's gonna be about a 15-foot length of area where the wall has to be moved. Does it just have to be moved? It looks like just a couple feet into the property, or is the easement, how wide is the easement that you need to avoid?
So it would be probably 7 to 10 feet because the utilities would have to be a few feet back from the sidewalk, and then you need a 5-foot easement around the utilities. And then the utilities have to be 5 feet apart from one another, so it ends up with a good chunk.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I noticed you put in some new trees that don't currently exist, and I was really excited about those. Will they still be part of the design?
The trees will. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, usually it's the first thing the fire department gets rid of. Okay.
I have a request going back to the porch, front porch. It is a later change, but it is still historic within the period of historic features. It needs to be preserved. Would the applicant please describe how what they're planning to do to do the work for this porch? What's being proposed to the porch?
So we, I think last time we presented, we did mention that we have a 3D laser scanner that helps us document existing conditions. So we have scanned the porch, so we have all the details. So we're going to try to replicate it as closely as possible. However, off-the-shelf materials right now may be a little different. So like ask the board if we have to replicate it exactly the way it is, or can we purchase new pieces that as closely resembles what's there as possible. Most of the railing, we're going to go with wood painted railings. However, the columns just for structural integrity and longevity, we are proposing to do a fiberglass one. Is that right, Bob? Fiberglass structural column.
So let's back up. You're implying that you're going to take it all apart and take it down?
Yeah, we went out there with our structural engineer, and he deemed that it's just not safe. It's pulling away from the building. It's just structurally not sound. The wood's all rotted.
Time has not been kind to this porch. There have been really ad hoc additions, variations. The subfloor is rotted. The joist work is coming apart. Somebody's went underneath there and tried to jack it up. The staircases are double staircase where the original design was only a single staircase. And there's just evidence of abuse isn't the right word, somebody trying to figure out how to solve the problem, and deferred maintenance, water, it is not in great shape at all. So there's a turning point when we're, it's just more than anything trying to create a safe environment and give the board what they're looking for and put the pieces back in. The pieces are in really, really tough shape.
Has the building, when was the building last occupied?
It's occupied right now.
Right now, yeah.
And Robert, would you go to page 61 in the entire packet? So I'm really astonished that this is supposedly in such a condition that you've got to dismantle and take apart this entire porch in a building that's occupied now and it's being used. And instead of just carefully starting to peel back the layers, taking off the trim, verifying that there is as significant damage. I mean, have you done the probes to know that it's completely, the structural system is completely gone, shot?
I wouldn't say completely gone. There's enough evidence around the perimeter. The deck, for example, is open. There's open areas where rot has formed. The soffit is dropping. The overall, because of the point cloud scan, the footings have dropped. The decking material is not original and in really tough shape. The columns are rotted in certain areas. There's just a general perspective of a kind of a back of the napkin. How would we get this back? How would we make it safe? And at the same time, recreate what's already there. This is subjective, but from our perspective, it's in really, really tough shape. But that said, if that's the approach you'd like us to take, we can be more surgical about it and try that methodology where we're pulling things back and we do it at a more paced perspective. I just don't know where the tipping point is and how we would get, will we come back to you and say, this is what we found? I'm sorry to be talking so much, but it's hard to take something apart to the level where you can actually see all the issues without getting approval yet to even go forward. So we're stuck in this do procedurally. We'd be open to whatever you suggest, but it's in tough shape.
Well, I'm looking at the three columns on the right don't seem to be anywhere near the damage as the corner column, which makes sense. It's more exposed on the corner. So, I mean, I would approach this by selectively doing more, starting into work, selectively pulling apart the pieces that are severely damaged, taking some of the fascias off, the moldings off, and getting under the floor, looking at the structure under the floor, and seeing if it's a historic feature. It should be repaired in situ. And those elements that are severely damaged can be replaced in kind, which means wood. And the moldings shouldn't be similar. They should match what's here.
Okay, I think, we understand your viewpoint, and, like Bob said, unfortunately, it's hard for us to do exploratory work right now when the building's occupied, but that's why we went with this strategy of, recreating it. However, if the board approves, we can build a route where we will, once, the building is unoccupied and we start doing some selective demolition, exploratory work, and more investigative work, we'll determine if what's feasible. And with the goal of retaining what's there and replacing what's needed. But if it comes to the point where it's just not salvageable, and we have structural documentation, structural engineers documentation that it's not, do we come back to the board and then figure out a new game plan?
Right. I'd like to understand the process that you typically go through.
Well, and for one thing, don't give in so easy, because that's just my opinion. There's still the rest of the board that has to, that will want to make itself known. But I'd rather hear the applicant say that, tell us that the process is going to respect and preserve those features of the porch that are not damaged, and replace those features, and do whatever, reattach structure to the building, to repair it in kind, in situ, and make it safe. And if I knew that, then I mean, I wouldn't require you to come back every time you found something that you didn't expect. It's the process and the that I'm more concerned about. I'd much rather do it that way than for someone to tell me that they're going to just, because procedurally it's easier, to tear it all down and build a new one and replace the features in fiberglass.
Yeah, if this was a restoration project, I don't think we'd be subject to our review, would it?
I'm not the guide person, the guidebook type.
Rick, I think you might be right. I have a question about again, on the porch. Since we have such a thorough review process at the city, I'm wondering if you guys are certain that you're not going to be required to put taller railings up. I don't know what the railing is on the upper level. Probably, I think you guys have it drawn at 3 feet. And I'm not sure I care that much about the iron railing, but the lower one at 42 inches would look
I don't think
different.
it's tall enough. It's less than 30 inches.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think presidential allows 3 feet.
This is a commercial. I mean, it's in the commercial building code, correct?
Yeah.
But
it's not a single family or townhouse or something like that, correct?
Right.
So I think you have to follow the commercial codes.
Yeah, but I think there was something, I could be wrong, I have to look it up again, but there was an exemption in there for R3.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I don't mean to question you guys, because you're
no, it's a good question.
It worries me.
Well, and that lends itself to repair rather than replace, because if you're repairing it, you can repair what's there. If you replace it, then you may have to bring it up to code.
We would be under the rehab code, and the rehab code, like depending on if the railing is not just, it's a gray area, but if you take it down, then you should bring that portion of whatever you take down back. So if you You know, for example, if the railing, the top railing is rotted, you can't put the back, I believe, but anyway, yeah, I think that's an issue that we probably need to chase down.
And I mean, well, we're not in the discussion part yet, so I'll wait for that.
Oh,
Yeah, I guess, are there any more questions? Don't see anything. So, oh, Tim, you're muted.
Yeah, Bob, am I mistaken in the, it looks like the drawings are calling for PVC shutters? Is that
Yeah.
right? And right now, what's on there? Are those wood shutters or aluminum?
No, they're metal.
Okay.
And is the PVC going to be hollow or is it a solid cross section?
That's a good question. I would assume it's solid because it's not very thick. But that's a good question. We should probably figure that out.
Because I think when we've approved faux materials, it's the hollow extrusions that we tend to shy away from. The same thing with the vinyl windows. If it's a solid section, we tend to be a little more lenient.
We're showing 25 on page 25 of our, we're showing the solid section. That'd
Okay.
be the objective.
Thank you. Sorry.
I have a
looked at your application.
quick question. Are there the two gable ends, one of the historic house that I guess will be infilled when the rear original parts demoed, and then the gable end, the two gable ends that face over top the hyphen roof? Do those have windows onto the hyphen roof? Right. Like you can't really see them in this image, but are there windows that face onto that hyphen roof?
They're not.
Good.
Can I ask why?
Liability.
Oh, I see. Yeah, we do.
As a former backdoor neighbor to that particular house, I think it's wise to put windows to access that flat roof.
Right, I see. There's not currently shown windows yet.
All right. Well, are there? We can always ask more questions later, but are there any comments from the public? Please use the raise your hand feature or press *9. To keep looking for Robert. There he is.
Yeah, there isn't anybody for comment though.
All right. Well, you guys are itching to discuss, so let's go.
I have a question, or not so much a question, an observation, I guess. Given the discussion about the porch, one thing that does seem, and you know, as everybody knows, I'm not very fond of this porch, but and I do think it looks better with just one set of stairs. But my question is there a precedent or something that is telling you that you can make it one run and have it porch on the left there? Look at the front elevation.
Yeah, those historical photos from the survey did show a single run.
Okay.
And you know, it was infilled between those two left columns with the balustrade.
Yep, it's much better.
Yeah, clearly the steps and the railings are modern. They can be replaced.
Yeah, on site you can also tell that the landing was expanded to accommodate the new run. So we'll be removing that extra landing also.
And then I don't know, you know, this may just be an accident of the, you know, however the house was last painted, but it does actually appeal to me that the shutters are picking up the accent color from the gable. I know this is a minor point, but it seems to make draw that detail down into the house, having that color repeated rather than having them the same color as the windows.
Oh, I see. That would be fine with us. Assuming the brown, I would like to re-render it just to make sure, because if we're using the new color on the siding, make sure that didn't stand out, but we'd have to obviously check with our client too. Tim, the historicism, like that whole siding, it's the colors, it's all a blending, but that color has been, is not original. It's part of what's embedded in the aluminum siding.
Right, no, I recognize that. I was thinking more about the one thing that does seem successful is that that detail up at the top being an accent color is being picked up by the shutter. So that it's not a make or break issue, but I'm just saying it does help draw that detail down and tie it into the house.
We can take a look at that.
Yeah, it's hard to tell from those historic photos, but because they look more, yeah, I don't know, hard to say. It looks slightly darker, but they're so grainy, it's hard to say.
I'll comment on the site. I guess that's got a whole can of worms that have been opened right there. I think since this seems like it's necessary, although I'm a little frustrated with the city on this one because I don't understand why they have to move the water meter. It sounds like it'd be better just to not have the wall or to interrupt the wall, as opposed to pulling it back 10 feet or whatever is required to get away from the easement. I don't know what the rest of the BAR thinks. So I guess it would just be, you'd have to regrade the grass. Can the meter be in the grass, or is this going to have to be a 10-foot wide paved area that bumps out of the sidewalk?
The meter will be in the grass.
Okay. So theoretically, you could just have the lawn come down to the sidewalk, and the meter would just be somewhere in there, and the wall would be missing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question about the wall as well, if I may. Do the other houses along that street have a wall as well, or is this just something that this particular house has? Or do they all just come down to the sidewalk?
Most of them have a wall of some type.
Pretty typical.
There used to be, I think, more stone walls on this street, and at some point, some of them were rebuilt as concrete, but they were rebuilt so long ago that we've even considered those to be historic. I think that was the case a couple doors down. And if I'm not mistaken, this wall may actually be scored to look like block. I think I poked around under the ivy when we did a different application. I think I did this one, but I'm not sure.
I think you're right.
Did I miss something that it couldn't actually, the water meter couldn't be, couldn't undercut the wall and stick the water meter in the yard above the wall? Is that, because they're read by radio now, right? They don't actually physically read them anymore. They're digital or they broadcast, or they can pick them up as they drive by.
This is something we were told by Roy Nestor in Utilities. He says the wall must be removed in that whole area, basically. We tried asking if the water meter could be put in the sidewalk in this case, because sometimes they allow that, and he said no, not in this case. And yeah, he basically just said there's no way around it. The wall has to be removed. So
I think that's so, I mean, it's not your guys' fault. So frustrating that the city is putting us in that position, because this really isn't a wall that should be removed if we're protecting the fabric of this neighborhood. And it's a stupid, stupid reason.
I would love if you guys could talk to him about it, but
I don't know what our recourse is.
Not recognized. Do you know if is he new?
The new person?
Sorry,
No,
did you-
no. Roy? No.
No, okay. Interesting. And
Did,
the ramp thing is really disturbing because that's obviously not required, and I'm surprised you guys had to fight for that. That's got me worried.
and is he referring, what's he referring, just out of curiosity, what is he referring to as far as the water meter is concerned? What, is he pointing to a particular regulation? Is that what's going on?
So the water meter has to be upgraded because of the upgrades to the building. Just the fixture counts require a bigger meter.
That makes
So that's
sense.
why mhm.
I was just wondering more about where you, what was generating the clearance demand and all that sort of thing. Where's that standard coming from? Is he referring to something?
That's a good question. I looked at their standards and design manual, and it's not super clear. They require, it actually says a 20-foot easement around utilities like this, but I know in the past on projects they've approved 5 feet. I'd have to ask exactly what he's referring to that says I don't know, that says that the wall couldn't be there, you know?
Right, right.
What we'd be willing to do, if it helped, is to try to mock up something that, you know, maybe, and if you, I don't know if you guys can support that. We're all in the same boat. We're all trying to do the right thing and make sure that, you know, that the right amount of review is put on this, you know. We're just stuck between a rock and a hard place. But if we drew something and drew some alternatives, and maybe, I don't know if you guys could support us in writing your
So I just love the idea that a water meter deserves 10 feet of clear space and a telephone pole is allowed to stick in the middle of the sidewalk. It's
Right.
like, it's so inconsistent, it just drives me crazy.
Right.
I would suggest that, I mean, I feel like the board could support you in terms of noting that the wall is historic. It's part of the historic features of the site and the building, and that building code does allow waivers for certified historic buildings. So ask if a waiver couldn't be obtained in recognition of the historic wall.
Great suggestion.
And it's important to know it's a feature of the neighborhood. Every property on that side of the street all the way to Rugby has a low retaining wall.
Yeah, this has been, you know, I don't want to wash my laundry in front of any here on Channel 10 with our wide viewership, but I will say you know, there's some, for instance, the ADA, we do not have currently an ADA coordinator. So there was a lot of default to conservative interpretation as far as my understanding. The thing about the wall, I thought it had something more to do with a fire hydrant location. And because I just found the letter here from Roy Nestor. It says, please show the new water meter behind the sidewalk in the front yard. The city will need the new PUE for this as well. I don't know what a PUE is. Due to the high curb present in this location, the meter needs to be moved back into the grass area so it can be constructed properly. We can discuss this further via email or phone if needed. So I guess the question would be is between the engineers, you know, Kendra, did you all, where, I mean, like I said, I always thought that this was necessary, that little jog was necessary for the fire hydrant, and there were some provisions in a special use permit about fire safety. But if they can put it in a slab at grade behind the wall, or they, you know, that would be something worth me having further conversations. Roy's not, he's not unreasonable, or at least, you know, I've dealt with him a lot, but so the question would be for them, since this isn't about a fire hydrant, it's just a meter, can that meter be installed at grade and the wall kept in place?
Yeah, I don't understand it. I mean, they just make the not the the pipe a little bit taller. What's the big deal? For putting the meter in. I mean, you have the meter wrenches are plenty long. I don't, that wall's what, 16 inches tall, 18 inches tall? Just doesn't make any sense to me.
I think the thing in the standards and design manual that we've fought over for so long was just the fact that they don't want to have any private construction over top of any sort of public utility. So the line that's serving that meter will be going under a wall that if the city had to service that line, they don't want to have to worry about being responsible for rebuilding the wall.
That fits with what I've heard. So that, yeah.
But if you take that at face value all across the town, they're going to destroy a lot of things. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, this was part of what was argued when the standards and design manual got approved. And no, it was a big argument and we lost some battles.
Right.
In fact, I'm trying to think of a way to detach from this issue specifically. I think that one thing, if I could recommend, be if there does in fact have to be a jog per se in the wall, that you could say, fine, just reconstruct something that's similar. Or if the city say we understand this and we'd like approve everything, the applicant could say we're going to take this out of this request and treat it later, like I thought we might be doing with the front ADA ramp. I just there's an awful lot going on at this site. I know we want to resolve this, but I'm not sure we can resolve it tonight. But I would like to find a way for it to move forward. And part of the BAR's review here is to get the COA that then allows the site plan to move forward. So there's some choreography here that isn't perfect, but a COA for the remainder of the project and this matter to come back as a later separate request, while it might not let the site plan be finalized, it does allow the designers to move forward in developing the construction drawings for the rest of the project. So if that helps, that's how I would like to see it broke up. And then I can reach out for some clarification, because we've got a lot of different people have been talking. We've had people talking about ADA. We've had people, we had the engineer, we had the designers. I know Kendra's been on, it's a lot of different folks are feeding information into this. Let me, and I myself thought this was about a fire hydrant. So let me pursue this further. And if you all are willing, move forward with some type of comment. And then Bob, if you all on your end, it would come from saying, we would, like to move forward and remove this at your request, remove this so that it's not some condition that we have to deal with later that allows the rest of this to kind of exist separately in its own COA.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to us, and we'll fight the good fight. It's just, we're going to run into somebody sometimes as you can't do that, or whether this is our standard. But I think we can help more with Kendra, and maybe we can illustrate things. And there's nothing like a good diagram or alternatives. Hey, how about this? How about that? Maybe they're just saying no because whatever. That's what the standard says. I like your idea, Jody, about trying to say that this is a historic wall and this is a historic neighborhood, and we're getting feedback from another portion of the review process that says that this is not a good idea. So we're coming to you hat in hand to see if we can work this out.
All right, so we're gonna You guys are okay with us severing this portion of the site plan from the rest of the project?
Unless that's a bad idea, I don't think we can give you a definitive because it's not us saying, oh yeah, we'll do whatever. So I'd rather move forward and get some kind of blessing on where we are so that we can move that part forward.
Yeah.
And
Just
we
create
the
a
statement
situation where the resolving that corner would be a separate COA, it'd be another application.
when we make our approval tonight, let's makes it add in a statement saying just that we this wall is historic. Preserve it.
I mean, can we recommend that they remove the ivy and repair the fence? And
Yeah, it's in the conditions. I have that in there as the things I've recommended. So
right, that's right. Thank you.
The rest of the house.
Yeah. And I apologize, Kendra, for not being in on those calls earlier. Yeah.
Sherry,
Welcome.
did you just raise your hand?
Yes, I just wanted to talk about the guidelines for rehabilitation and in particular for restoration or rehab of existing features on the property. And I just posted the link to the rehab guidelines for the applicants. There are several that pertain to this application, and particularly the proposal to replace existing shutters and with PVC, and also to rebuild the columns in the front, which I guess we're all assuming are wood with fiberglass columns. From the rehabilitation guidelines, Section B, Guideline 5, restore as many elements as possible, particularly materials and decorative details, and that word is restore. 11, and this is under B again, B11, avoid materials where they never existed. In Section C, which paragraph 20 there, and several other paragraphs address shutters in particulars. Shutters should be wood and should be mounted on hinges. And there is some language after that would allow for wood composite, but I don't see any PVC or other materials called out in the guidelines. And finally, in Section D5, do not strip porches of historic materials and details. I'm playing Melanie tonight. Thank you. But that is the purview of our board is to evaluate this application in light of specific guidelines that were given.
There is also under that porch guideline number 4, replace an entire porch only if too deteriorated to repair or is completely missing, and designed to match original as closely as possible. So we really do need to know if it's too deteriorated or not.
Okay. Well, I guess our advised strategy could be that we will be repairing it in situ. Should we find that it's beyond repair, we will come back to the owner board and notify you.
At the same time, I'm fine with replacing the stair and the railings to what you show in your proposed design.
You know, since it's a restoration of the porch.
Of those features of the porch that are historic.
Yeah.
Yes. I also want to commend the architects for the making the changes to the addition on the back. It looks much better now. Thank you.
I was about to thank the applicants for that too. Very much responded to our comments from last meeting, and it's quite attractive too. Thank you.
They're all good comments.
Yeah, I support the project. I think, especially with a changed attitude towards repair and restoration on the front porch, fighting the good fight on the site wall in the front, with the more detail in the landscape plan. And I think the architectural additions are are elegant and appropriate and in concordance with our guidelines. So thank you.
Is that a motion? I'll second.
I think we
If
got to
a-
be very specific with this motion, since I think we've picked it apart a little bit.
And there are conditions that I don't forget to, if you don't mind, give some consideration to.
So we're approving PVC shutters and fiberglass columns. I just want to make clear that everybody else supports this but me.
So I
I
think
haven't heard the applicant say, they're now saying they'll repair and, in situ the porch, but I haven't heard any discussion on materials or a change in that. And that would be up to them at this point to alter what they've submitted.
We can investigate wood shutters. We just picked that for, just longevity and maintenance, but we could definitely investigate the wood shutters.
And can we depend upon the porch being repaired in kind for materials and features, appearance?
Details.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Th-
thank
that was, I'm sure you understand this, and we're not trying to make light of it. We had our assessment was, and maybe it was too light in relationship to the preservationist ideas, but it smelled like a duck, it walked like a duck. It's in tough shape. And it wasn't us trying to say that, like, let's just wipe it out and that's an easy decision. It was just so bad that it's so sagging. The scan shows 6 inches of, so we're cumulatively thinking about all the safety issues, all the things that we think we're going to find, but that's different than we have found them. So I think we're recommitted to say, let's go double check our assumptions, and then we'll come back and we will have a much more acute understanding of what the problems are, and we'll present those problems and ask for a way forward. And if the columns are completely rotted, they're rotted, what would you like us to do? We'd like to go back with a new wood column, try to fix it if we can, but those discussions we will have as a way of exploring. First we need to explore it.
And I think that's fair. The way it's presented now, we're replacing it without really knowing that it requires to be completely replaced. So
yeah, that's fair.
That's tough for us as the board to approve. We need to see evidence that indeed it's too far gone to be repaired.
Understood and fair.
And I at least as a one board member, I would say I was really impressed with the 3D heat scan that you showed us and that you put up a little while ago. I have no doubt that front corner is sinking, and there are other conditions that make it tenuous. But that doesn't mean all of the architectural details there are tenuous. I think structurally you're right. It's not in great shape, and it may not be safe for the students that are coming back and starting class in about a week, that are occupying the building now. That'll be your client's decision. But I'm just trying to distinguish between, a condition that you definitely have identified that we don't doubt is there, and what could be preserved of a really, a 1920s, a 100-year-old porch.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that's it. I did want to commend, I noticed that the sunburst brackets are being preserved, I think, from the drawings I can tell. And if those are in bad shape, I would hope that they can be, rehabbed or replicated or whatever. They seem to be in okay shape from pictures that we've seen, but you would know better being on the property. But all of those lovely details that make this building so unique, I just, I know that anyway, and the porch is now one. We've determined that it is historic and we need to preserve it. So anyway, I just can't support the PVC shutters or fiberglass columns, but otherwise I would support, the approach that you've adopted to see what can be repaired. I don't feel like I want the applicant to have to come back. I don't know how to navigate this. So I'll ask Jeff, where we can go with that, whether the applications can sort of be revised here. We can move forward for them, or?
I mean, the way I've kind of been interpreting the BAR kind of tweaking a scope is if the applicant acknowledges it and says, hey, I would like to remove this. That way it's not a on the condition that this come back, that it's a they're acknowledging this element has been revised or removed. I mean, that happens all the time, and then that revision is incorporated into the motion. And if the result is something that has to come back later, then clarify that and remove it from the scope.
I saw a couple hands pop up. James and Breck, did you guys have?
Yeah, just on the porch, I think from looking at the pictures, it seems to me that there's a downspout missing adjacent to that corner column, which likely has a lot to do with its condition and probably the settling. So I'm assuming y'all are going to address stormwater management in the restoration. But I don't know what your construction schedule is, but I'd encourage you to not let the condition get any worse, and perhaps put even a corrugated pipe or something just as a temporary fashion to get the water away from there until you're able to go under construction, so that, as I said, the condition doesn't get any worse than it is.
Great suggestion.
Breck, did you have something?
Well, just as a matter of process, I wonder if we could approve the application but not approve the removal of the historic site wall. And if they can, if they can come up with a scenario that works with the city that does that, they've got the approval they need. They don't have to come back to us rather than separating it out.
Right.
And I apologize. I want to nitpick on one little thing. And I'm sorry, Sherry, I disagree with you on the shutters. I think, so looking at the guideline, it says in general, they should be wood. The existing shutters are metal. And then it says, in some circumstances, appropriately dimensioned, painted composite materials. Doesn't say composite wood, but just says composite materials. So that's where I was asking if these were solid sections or hollow, which I think what we've been trying to avoid is the cheap vinyl things that you buy at Lowe's. But if it's a PVC, a solid section of PVC trim, we allow quite frequently, and I think that's what I'm reading this as. And my concern with the fraternity house is that if they put up wood in 5 years, they're going to be rotten and unpainted and starting to sag again. And the longevity of doing something that's not wood appeals to me in this instance. But that's
PVC. Can a PVC be mounted to hinges?
And it does need to be painted, which being a dark color, if I know you guys have them modeled as white, but Tim had talked about doing that dark accent color. Make sure that you can actually put a dark color on that.
Right. I mean, fiberglass might be better than PVC, actually. I mean, I empathize with Sherry's point of view, however, I'd like to say. as far as the wood, because they are wood windows, but I also, I mean, I don't know, it's a sticky wicket, but they're wood windows.
Again, avoid materials where they never existed. I mean, I would say with regard to Mr. Schwartz's comment about this being a fraternity house, it's not the undergraduates that maintain a fraternity house. Every fraternity house at UVA and probably anywhere in the nation pretty much is not owned by the undergraduate members, but it's owned by a house corporation, or it's even in a lot of cases, they're owned by the universities or colleges where they're located on. So I don't think there's an exemption in our guidelines to say, oh, this is a frat house, we'll let them do more durable materials than the private house next door that can afford to maintain it. I don't think we have the leeway to look at economic circumstances of different applicants under our guidelines. I'm sorry.
No, I just have past experience. The fraternity houses all look pretty awful. pretty fast.
No disagreement with you. I served on a task force of the Board of Visitors in 1986 to get the tax partnerships going to rehab fraternities. I'm well aware of them. I'll date myself right there. Been looking at all these houses for a very long time. I was on the BAR when we made this a district. So I've reviewed the entire survey for every property in this district probably many times over. But I don't think that's a pass. I just don't think our guidelines allow us to select who can maintain something and who can't. And if it's low income housing, but they're in a historic house, we may feel bad imposing more expensive materials that are more costly to maintain, but I don't think that we have the leeway to do that.
No, and I think the disagreement is I'm disagreeing with your reading of the guidelines on that. I think it is allowed, it's permitted in certain circumstances. But this is, I don't mean to drag this out because we're taking a lot of time. If other people agree with Sherry, we should definitely go with wood.
So just clarification, is PVC a composite?
Well, there's PVC and then there's PVC composite.
Okay, I thought your drawing said PVC, but I might have seen them wrong.
And they are solid and they do come with hinges.
And they are paintable.
Just as an example or a comparison, we've allowed composite slate shingles on roofs in this district, as opposed to requiring Buckingham slate.
I would point out that composite slate is allowed in our guidelines. It's specifically called out as a material that's permitted.
And it says it here as well that in some circumstances, composite material shutters may be used.
Well, the best example is and I cannot remember the address, but it is over there in fraternities, was the Chippendale Railing that was installed. This was prior to me, more than 3 years ago, but I remember the gentleman that did the work shared with me the photographs, and in fact, but it was a composite material that they used for that. And actually, Carl, from the minutes, it was something you had recommended. I was trying to find the specific language of how that was differentiated, and I couldn't dig it up. But it is so there is a composite material. This is solid, and then I think there's the extruded vinyl type of thing, like you would, like you say, get at a hardware store. So there's definitely a distinct difference in how the materials are constructed and what they're called. I just don't have it at the tip of my tongue right now, but the BAR has allowed that. In fact, encouraged it.
I mean, I guess I would say that at a very minimum, it really needs to be a paintable surface. That's not, that's something that's designed for paint. It isn't color impregnated, and so you get that the imperfection of a hand painted surface. That, in terms of your perception anyway, that gets it a long way toward being a wood shutter in terms of what you see. But these are wood windows also. So I mean, they've got to be up there and maintaining that whole those components all along, I would say.
I'm honestly, if you guys want to put a requirement that they're wood, that's fine. I want to toss that out there. I thought, I guess it depends on who makes the motion.
I think we already have a motion.
I don't think that was a full motion. I thought somebody just said they liked it.
I thought Jody seconded it.
Well,
I did. It wasn't a motion. Carl's right.
I would strongly recommend that the motion refer to the first consider the conditions that I had inserted, and then I do agree with Mr. Gastringer's suggestion about addressing the water meter. I think that's sufficient as well.
So we've got the issue about, we've got the change relative to the front porch. We've got the shutters, and we've got the site wall. Are there anything else?
Actually, sorry to confuse things again with that site wall. Their drawing shows it jogging around a fire hydrant. I think that's going to be a given no matter what. I could be wrong on that, but I'm willing to concede that we just allow, we can approve the drawing as submitted, but not what they've described with the water meter. Does that make sense to everyone? So they'd still be interrupting that wall, but I think that they're gonna have to interrupt it at least for the fire hydrant.
Yeah, if the fire hydrant has to go in, it's the same set of circumstances with the.
Yeah, it's just not a 10-foot clearance and all that other. Or we can just take the wall out. You know, we don't approve the wall, but I think we're gonna be stuck with that fire hydrant no matter what.
I'll tell you what, if you approve that wall as it is, we are gonna fight the good fight. We're gonna show you, we're gonna do due diligence. We're gonna show different versions of it. We're gonna try to send it up the flagpole and see what happens. I know other projects where, you know, so anyway, we will do our best, and it's a design problem. So working with the city, working with Kendra, we're gonna make it the best that we can within the limitations. So we would like as much freedom as possible to do it and as much relief as possible. So if you grant that, take it under an advisement that we would at least try to make it better or try to make it fit in, but we're going to stir that pot all at once when we try to get the water meter in and the hydrant and
Sure.
the wall, and the more latitude you can give us, the better it is, so that our client knows that there isn't a trip hazard going forward. But we will fight the fight.
Yeah, I think I'd like to make a motion. Having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including city design guidelines. Wait, is this the right one? City guidelines for rehabilitation and additions. I move to find that the proposed alterations, repairs, and construction at 125 Chancellor Street satisfies the BAR's criteria and is compatible with this property and other properties in the corner ADC district, and that the BAR approves the application as submitted with the following recommendations. The cement board siding on the addition and aluminum siding will be smooth with no faux grain. Remove from exterior walls unnecessary wires, conduits, and related boxes. Clearing of vegetation from the front sidewalk wall and metal fencing. Trimming and pruning of remaining vegetation and removing invasive plants. When the aluminum siding is removed, provide the BAR for the record photographs of each elevation. In addition, the BAR supports the project's approach of repair and restoration of the porch. In addition, the board recognizes that some elements of the porch will be reinstated given the documentation that has been prepared. Shutters on the project should be wood and not PVC. And that the site wall is approved as drawn, but the BAR recommends the applicant work with the city to minimize any required demolition or reconstruction of that wall.
I can second that.
May I add a quick amendment? Recommendation that the shutters be the same color as the accent color up in the gable.
Can I ask one dumb question? Is the siding presumably when the aluminum siding comes off, the old wood siding is being refurbished? Or that's
No.
it's all getting hardy board?
Yes.
Yeah, it's in pretty rough shape, and we're going back with the Artisan, which has that
Right.
thick bevel.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wasn't. The notes weren't totally clear. I mean, it says it on the addition, but doesn't say. It says replace aluminum siding, but it doesn't
Right.
specifically say it's getting the hardy board. At least I didn't notice that. Unless I'm missing something.
So hold on a second, because I know we have a motion. Yeah, my understanding was that, and I wasn't quite sure how, but there was the aluminum siding was being replaced where necessary.
No, it's like being removed.
It's all being stripped.
Okay, so I was interpreting replace as replacing it with, so it's replacing it with something else. That's okay. So it's replacing it with the cement shingles or cement siding. Okay, I got you.
Correct. Was my
Yeah, I'm fine with that, Carl.
okay. Joe, do you still second that?
Oh, yes, I'm fine with that.
Thank you. I'll call a vote now. Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. McClure,
Yes.
Mr. Lehendra,
Aye.
Mr. Zemer,
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Miss Lewis,
Nay.
and Mr. Gastinger.
Aye.
And that's approved. That motion is approved with a vote of 8-0.
Thank you, guys.
I think Sherry voted no on that, right?
I am listening, I promise. So, thank you.
Oh, I thought I heard a yay as well.
It was nay.
Okay.
Nay.
Yeah, that's the.
This is why I like yes and no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only for the limited reasons I noted. Otherwise, the applicant for submitting this to us and all the work on it.
From now on, any no votes, you have to emulate
That's
a
right.
horse.
Must
So.
be an animal. So.
Wilbur.
Oh boy.
Okay.
Thank you all.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you for your time.
And please take the sign down. Keep forgetting to recommend that.
One down.
All right. Yeah. Now I'm going to take.
I swear I'm trying, Jody.
Carl, do you mind if we take just a 3-minute break really quickly?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thanks. And I've gone ahead and promoted Megan Taylor, who's the next applicant. So, okay.
Okay.
How come I can't hear Jeff eating?
Do you want to hear Jeff eating?
Yeah.
No, not
I mean,
really.
that's a first. I'm gonna call my mom and say, "Holy crap! Guess what? Just someone asked me." So,
We've already had one horse impersonation tonight. We don't need
yeah, that's
two.
right.
What was that, Mr. Ed?
Yeah. They did put peanut butter in his mouth to make him talk.
Well, you ever done it where you put on the top of a dog's nose?
It's,
There's a glob of peanut butter right there. That's pretty entertaining.
yeah, SPCA is listening. Shh, no.
Hey, my dogs all love me. They also love peanut butter.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. My dog will lick the peanut butter, and then it's like, then he just starts licking every arm and leg as if there's peanut butter on it. I guess because he's licking, he's getting on with his his tongue, and then it's just an ongoing process. It really doesn't entertain him for hours. I have to give him that. For an old goofy dog that can't believe he's hanging in there. Megan, nice to see you.
Hello.
Welcome to the fun. Do we have, we're still missing a few here.
Oh, there we
Missing
go.
our MC, aren't we? Oh, there he is.
I think we're all ready to go.
May I ask a quick question?
You may.
Would this be an appropriate time to announce the design award?
I just saw that this was, yeah.
Did you see so you saw the email I just sent
I
you,
just
Carl?
saw the email. I laughed when I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, it was really talking to Megan about it. It was so excited, and she's like, "Well, what are you guys gonna do?" It's like, nothing. We're not doing anything. No balloons or, and baby steps. But yes, she's very excited, and maybe Carl, you could at least sneak this one in.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like best actress, and then we do something.
Park Street.
Yeah.
Will be getting an award for rehabilitation of a historic structure, as awarded to owners Kristen Jensen and Dan Krasnogor. Thank you. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I gave him phonetic spelling for a few things. So.
And Megan, I guess your work will complement that. So.
I hope so.
A certificate suitable for framing will be circulated once I can get back into the city hall and print a few things. So actually, Carl's chiseling them in his backyard with his junior stoneworker set. So it's going to be very.
Well, things are expensive right now. I had to use the tree I cut down, so they're going to be wood this time.
Oh, that means your cats can tear them up. That's not good.
Don't say that word. They'll come out of hiding.
Yeah. You know, speaking of trees, my son and daughter gave me a smoker for Father's Day, and my next door neighbor has this huge pecan tree, and big limbs are always falling off of it. But I tell you, if you smoke meat with pecan, oh my God, I'm like ready to. Breck's probably going to come over going, what's going on? There's another limb missing from that tree. What's happening? So
Which side of you is this, Jeff? Which neighbor?
this is Dave and Diane to the west.
Okay.
But yeah,
maybe Andy will reopen with a pecan smoked.
Down the street during dinner.
Oh my God! I mean, it's fantastic. It really, what a difference. And now the house smells like it's instead of the dog licking its head, Sandy and I are like just walking around sniffing them.
Now that we've talked about barbecue,
Move on.
we're all gonna be hungry.
Do we have an application for 801 Park Street?
This is an 801.
Apparently.
Yep. We have before you the award-winning 801 Park Street. This is a COA request for a landscape and hardscape plan. This is the Pavilion Tennyson house. It was constructed in 1893. My date is wrong on the report, but 1893. It is in the North Downtown ADC district, and it is contributing. It was originally more elaborately detailed than it is now. It's a Queen Anne style house with a steeply pitched roof, tall chimneys, large dormer windows, and cresting at the ridges. Has been described as one of the most elaborately decorated homes on Park Street. As you know, it's been to the BAR twice for some renovations, particularly in February 2017. The BAR approved a series of exterior renovations, which that work again was recognized by the BAR with the 2020 Preservation and Design Award for the rehabilitation of a historic structure. Excuse me. The application before you this evening is to a COA request for a conceptual master plan for plantings, patios, walkways, and pools, and a parking area on the side street. And just one quick clarification: we originally talked about not having any trees removed, but there's a small apple tree at the front sidewalk. They do hope to remove that, and it will be replaced with 2 serviceberry trees, one on each side of that walk. The BAR should discuss the applicant's request for the option work at the front walk, just so that we know that that's something that they've specifically asked about. The intent is to correct the riser heights at the steps, and it also in that provides an opportunity to better align it with the front of the house. The fact that it's concrete, you can certainly assume it's not original to the house. Certainly it's old, but not original. The plan as has been submitted is to some extent conceptual. There are some detailed information in there, but the applicant then has provided the addendum sheets, which one of them here in front of you, to establish the types of materials that are going to be used. The point here being that this is a large scale project and this isn't going to be tackled all at once. So to sort of establish some parameters that they can move forward with it, and if they have to maybe adjust something, we've given a range of things that can be used, and so and staff is recommending approval of the COA, and I've stated here 5 conditions that I think cover the basis for allowing them to move forward with what's conceptual, and also calling out there's the porch deck. And there's a wood deck in the rear, and there is a proposed shed separating those out, and they are excluded from this and would require separate COAs at a later date. So the only thing I would add is just, if it helps, Megan pointed out to me, and felt bad I missed it, but the patio or this proposed pool area is actually depressed down into the grade. And that's what's allowing, I think, really happy that it is that instead of having a pool with a big wall around it or a fence, it's allowing sort of a continuous appearance of being open from Park Street back. And so the pool would be built at that's probably a much later phase, and also would, if it happens, when it happens, the goal is to incorporate some self-closing cover, which with that does not require the large fences that we see in other situations. So I think it's an excellent solution. So just to make that clear, that it is depressed into the landscape and not elevated above it. I think it's pretty clear. If you have any questions for me, otherwise, Carl, you can introduce Ms. Taylor.
All right. Well, yeah, Ms. Taylor, do you have anything to add?
Hey, yes, if you wouldn't mind, Robert, if you would go to the existing conditions survey, which might be, yeah, second, one more, yeah, right there. I'll briefly just go over the existing conditions and then briefly go over the property goals. As you can see, so this survey was done back in the fall, and we just had, you know, all the, obviously the built conditions surveyed, the mature trees surveyed, and the grade between the main house and the rear studio, detached studio, and then also the grade where the proposed pool might be located in the future. There really aren't any discernible landscape features other than the two front walkways, or the one front walkway connecting the front porch to the sidewalk on Park Street, and then the side walkway connecting the front porch to Park Hill Street. If you wouldn't mind, Roberts, going to the first page, just showing the overall master plan. So I just will briefly describe the overall goals for the property. When the owners had reached out to me, they wanted to just do an overall master plan before starting with any smaller planting projects. And the overall goals for the property are to revitalize the overall landscape, revitalize the existing circulation, and to create new circulation, and to create private outdoor spaces. Regarding the first goal, revitalizing the overall landscape, the intent is to maintain the open park-like aesthetic along the Park Street frontage, and to create more private, intimate garden spaces starting from the front plane of the house and then moving back to the rear of the property and the rear of the house. The second goal for revitalizing the existing circulation and creating new circulation, both of the existing walkways have entry steps, as Jeff had mentioned, that where the risers are uneven and they can be hazardous to navigate, especially the steps on the side walkway, which is used actually more often than the front walkway. Both walkways are also narrow, and we're proposing to have them be widened. And then the front walkway is cracking and settling in several places, and there's grass and weeds growing into the joints. New circulation is needed from the off-street parking area on Hill Street to the rear entrance of the main house and to the entrance to the studio. The rear entrance to the house is used on a more regular basis, and the entrance to the studio would be used for visiting family and guests. The final goal of the property is to create private outdoor spaces. Again, as you saw on the existing conditions survey, there are no programmed or delineated outdoor spaces. Low retaining walls are needed to create these spaces due to the sloping grade. And with the use of plantings and walls to create and define the private spaces, the homeowners will then have the ability to utilize the extents of their property as desired. As Jeff had stated, that this is obviously a conceptual plan, but the first phase would be the front yard plantings, the English garden, the front walkway and Park Hill walkway improvements. I welcome any questions.
All right, well, first let's see, are there any questions from the public? Please use the raise your hand feature or press *9. And again, the raise your hand feature can be found on the participants tab on your Zoom window.
I don't see any raised hands, Carl.
Great. All right, any questions from the board?
I've got a question. Hi, Megan. Just thinking about trees in the front yard, existing trees, are there other additional trees that didn't show up on the survey on the north side of the lot in the front yard?
Yes. There are some smaller trees. I believe there's a willow oak and a couple of other trees that were saved. I believe there was some clearing done when the renovation work happened on the house.
Yeah.
And the area that was cleared on the northeastern side of the property, there were some trees that were saved. And I believe a couple of trees are not on this survey. I think they're smaller than the caliper that they surveyed.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, they seem to show up in the street view, but and walk. Couldn't remember if they were still there.
So just to reiterate, that apple tree is just to the north of the front walkway. And that tree seems to be dying. So that would be the only tree that we are proposing to remove.
Yeah. Well, note that the street view that's on the side street on Park Hill is actually a 2012 image, because I remember when I was looking, I was thrown by the difference. So the Park Street view is somewhat more current, but the side street, they didn't. Little Google guy didn't drive down there for some time. So.
All right, well, are there any comments from the public? Please use the raise your hand feature or press *9.
I don't think there's anybody, Carl.
Great. All right, board. Tim?
I'll raise my hand. In general, I think the strategy makes a lot of sense. Really, the only thing I would like to see are some more street trees. And that whole part of Park Street is kind of from there and on going up on the other side to the north. It's really the least treed part of the street. It's pretty hot on a summer day. And I think the house has certainly got the scale to handle some big trees down near the front. And it would still, I think it would enhance a park-like setting, frankly. But I think the sunken pool and all that makes a great deal of sense. I think it could be very nice.
Thank you. So are you suggesting understory trees as well as larger shade trees?
No, I'm thinking more just large shade trees, because I think the understory trees would start to, I mean, I think the expanse and the openness is nice. I just think having some large scale trees, which I realize will take some time, but I just think particularly where some of the smaller houses were built in the 60s and 70s, they really annihilated most of the bigger trees that I presume were there once. And I think trying to fill those teeth back in would be nice, because a good chunk of Park Street's, very well shaded, and it feels, kind of sylvan.
Yeah, that aerial photo from the 30s is pretty telling.
Yeah.
That, there really were quite a few larger trees on the property. I do think I was going to have a similar comment, but I do think there a few of those might be already underway with those smaller trees that don't show up on the survey. But otherwise, the newer proposed trees are almost all smaller understory. So I think some consideration or recommendation for finding a spot for a few larger canopy trees would be welcome as it relates to the neighborhood.
One thing to note, I know there are overhead utility lines on that side of the street. That being said, we could propose planting some of the larger trees maybe off a little bit further back than maybe some of the typical street trees.
Yeah, I think that would be fine, and I think we could leave some difference to finding a location for those. I think the design is really elegant and appropriate. I don't think, and for the most part, especially for the early phases, I think we have more than enough information to give some approvals. I do want to speak a little bit about the concrete wall and stair. Clearly the stair has some safety issues with the way that it's been constructed, but I think if you listen to the last discussion, I think there's about concrete walls and them as character defining in our neighborhoods. I'd probably recommend or prefer keeping the location of the stair and path where it is. I personally don't have a issue with adjusting and reconstructing the width or and allowing for the newer material. But I'm curious what the others on the board say. But the rest of the plan seems, especially if we're not including walls or future fencing or the deck or pool, I think this is an excellent direction. I think it's in keeping with the house and would be welcome additions.
Just a quick aside, it's kind of funny, the survey implies that the walkway is heading dead into the porch, but it's not. It's kind of weird.
So on that walkway, I went up and down Park Street, and there's one other stair that's similar. Concrete wall and stair with kind of flared curve opening and a narrow sidewalk, and it's all the way down just south of Lions Court. So it's pretty far away, and so I was trying to figure out if this is actually a character defining feature along Park Street. Walls are a character defining feature. We've got stone walls, we've got brick walls. It seems so odd that it's such a tiny little stair and that it is crooked and not really lined up with the front porch. It just feels like I wish I knew the history of it. It seems like an accident.
It's a whoops, yeah.
And I have a little bit of concrete wall fatigue. I apologize to the rest of the BAR. So I'm kind of ready to just say, this is definitely, it makes no sense with the house. It seems like it was maybe Public Works, a century ago decided that this needed to be put in for some street upgrade project. And I'd be willing to say, fix it, make it right, make it look like it belongs with the house. But that's me.
I mean, the wall itself it's hardly a wall. It's maybe 9 or 10 inches tall. Not speaking for the homeowners, but if I think there were changes, it would maybe be the entire length of that wall becoming stone or something.
Well, I'm not saying that, unless that's what they want. I'm just saying, if you guys want to rip up the front steps, that'd be okay. Now, if the homeowners would like to put in stone along the whole wall, they can offer that.
Proposing that, but yes.
The next house down is that 1860s house that the Gellies are doing all that work on. Even has the curved walls turning in, but boy, and then you go down, there's 2 more going towards up towards Farish. Thing is, boy, they're in such bad shape. The other thing I had mentioned to Megan is, trying to determine exactly where that wall falls before they start tinkering with it. some of these are even within the city right of way or abut it. But it goes back to, we've said a long time, a large discussion of these walls and how to retain them and what to retain and where, just like curbstones. But if I don't know, Megan, does that help you with where they were as far as fixing the risers?
I'm sorry, ask that again.
I know that the concern was to try and fix the risers. Is that a problem if that's all that's available?
Really, I think the risers on the side walkway are actually even more important to the homeowners because that gets used more frequently, especially with guests. And that the riser height difference on those steps is actually greater than the riser height difference on the front walkway steps. So it would not be critical to them if those concrete risers remain the same at the front, the concrete wall would remain the same. And the only thing that would change on the front walkway would be the width and the paving material. I think maybe a greater importance should be focusing more on the side walkway steps.
Just the reason I'm asking is if a motion's made, because that was sort of an either or question or an alternative question from the applicant, make sure that we state clearly in the motion which the BAR is it prefers. Sorry.
Interestingly, the Park Street sidewalk is actually centered right on the front door of the house across the street. Makes you wonder if they were good friends.
Interesting.
Actually, how close to the fire hydrant does it come when it comes straight?
Stop it.
Not nice, Tim. Quick comment though on the suggestion to add some street trees. You mentioned the power lines, and it looks like it's all communication lines that run along that sidewalk. I could be wrong. In the past, we had this idea that you could grow street trees over those. That may be a false assumption, but I know we've definitely assumed that before. Be worth investigating if you go with our recommendation to put in some street trees.
Yeah, it's, I would second that because they're nowhere near as aggressive where it's comm lines. It's really the power company that wants them out of their trees for obvious reasons.
The cable company can be kind of brutal sometimes, but they're
well. That's why you stand out there when you see their truck show up and tell them to move on.
I would like to not characterize them as street trees, but characterize the recommendation as for canopy trees. Because I think there's something to be said for the composition of different views for the house, and generally it's getting larger canopy trees in there rather than, and there's not a consistent street tree along that section of park. We're not suggesting that.
Right. It's not like enfilade. Yes, I agree. I think that's a good characterization.
The tree commission has recommendations for appropriate canopy trees in the city. I'd suggest taking a look at that if Breck agrees.
Yep.
I did want to note on, I stuck this in the chat, but Jeff's recommendation was that all the trees be on the master tree list, and I don't think we need to exclude the fruit trees from that because they'll never find fruit trees on the city's master list. I think your application said that is Jeff's recommendation, that we just need to be careful we fix that.
Well, I was curious about that recommendation. Is that to give more flexibility in
Yeah, the idea I think was to let them finish the design
right
in phases and later on,
yeah,
and not come back to us.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that'd be fine.
Or, or if they prefer something different, but at least they had, a parameter to work within. And a good call on the fruit trees. I didn't realize they are not on the list. I'll say from a traffic calming design perspective as well, opening areas and enclosed areas, and that traveling from one to the other helps with that that engagement with the road, so to speak. So there are benefits to having areas that are when you come out from under that tree canopy. So just as a thought, and the guidelines do get into height recommendations for proximity to utility lines, things like that, which is also helpful. So
just to be clear, though, what we're considering is phase one, and it's the sidewalks, right? That's really what we're being asked to think about today, or the whole plan?
Whole plan.
Okay.
Are we in the discussion period now?
Yes.
Okay. My personal opinion is that I certainly see the need for the need. I understand the desire of the owners to have private spaces, and I really think the design is very skillfully done to provide that. And it looks like a very attractive. It's thoughtful. And I'm entirely for the conceptual design as put forward.
I agree.
Do we have anyone who would be opposed to what they've offered for the or what they've requested for the front walkway?
In other words, option one.
Yes, option one of widening it, both the steps and realigning and widening. Any opposed?
I prefer not to, but I'm not going to fall on the sword for it.
But it looks like if someone were to make a motion, it would probably pass. I think I'm seeing that correctly. Okay. Would anybody like to make a motion? Or is there more discussion? Sherry, if you want to, you can go for it.
Having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including the ADC design guidelines, I move that the proposed landscape and hardscape plan for 801 Park Street satisfies the BAR's criteria and is compatible with this property and other properties in the North Downtown ADC district. And the BAR approves this with the following conditions: that canopy trees be considered perhaps slightly step back from the street. I'm trying to capture what Breck has identified here. I'll entertain a friendly motion after I'm done with my motion, or a friendly amendment. That new trees and plantings will conform to the city's master tree list and master shrub list, with the exception of flowering trees shown on the design plan. Paving materials and walls will conform to the precedent images provided by the applicant. Proposed walls will not exceed the height of 4 feet above grade at any point on the outside face as viewed from Park Street and from Park Hill. As work progresses, the applicant understands that staff, that they will work with staff to assure that it's consistent with this certificate of appropriateness, with the understanding that there may be revisions that may require our review again, and that this certificate of appropriateness excludes any proposed shed and wood deck, which will require a later review and a separate appropriateness certificate. And that we would favor option one with regard to the alignment of the front sidewalk and steps on the Park Street side.
Quick amendment. You said exclude the flowering trees. It would be, I think we need to.
Oh, fruit, I'm sorry.
I also, would you be opposed to accepting either of those options? Let them choose for the front walk.
I'll amend my motion to say that the applicant is given discretion to pursue either option one or two. and that both meet our guidelines.
I'll go ahead and second that.
I'll call a vote then. Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Gastinger,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Aye, yes.
Mr. Schwartz,
Yes.
Mr. Zemer,
Yes.
Mr. Lehendro,
Aye.
Mr. McClure,
Yes.
and Mr. Moore.
Aye.
Okay. So that was a vote of 8-0 this time. Yes, great.
And Megan, if you would, congratulations. And if you would have the owners can remove the sign whatever post Robert taped it onto.
Yeah, it should be on a telephone or the telephone pole outside. So
Sure. Well, thank you all.
Megan.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thank
You
you.
too.
By the way,
You're not social distancing very well. Look at your background. Sorry.
Oh, what?
I was talking to James.
yeah, I know James.
With,
That's right.
Yeah, his
I wanted
background.
to comment. I noticed James' background. I'm probably in that photo.
Ah. It's just better than the creepy floating head he wore the last time. So
I think I am somewhere in there too.
Awesome.
Nobody's
Put
wearing
that
behind you,
on
James. You
because
better look out.
You announced the, yeah, you announced the BAR awards, so celebration photo.
Oh, there you go.
Hey, by the way, just you all may have noticed that the motions are a little bit revised. I took out the specific where we typically refer to a specific section of the design guidelines. I simply refer to the design guidelines, and per a suggestion that Carl had, I inserted an address so that sort of like when you read a motion, you know what it's addressed, what it is and where it is. So if anyone was wondering why things got a little bit different. Next up, and Mr. Wardell is here. Diane is here. Good. We've got, Diane, before I forget, we were going to look at the cemeteries. Remember, I think I spoke with you last, was that? Well, we were all set to do it. Because of COVID, we tabled that research project, but we're hoping to pick it up again in this next grant cycle. So I will be talking. We didn't forget about it. That's what happened.
Okay,
all right. Where do I go?
Okay, I guess I'll start for the group. As I said, I'm Diane Hillman. I'm president of Congregation Beth Israel. Speaking tonight about the entry door security upgrade. Just a little background. The events of July and August of 2017 were felt throughout our community, but in particular at Congregation Beth Israel, both the KKK and the Unite the Right rallies. We were located, of course, right between the Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee statues, and we were literally in the middle of the fight among the opposing forces. So we experienced these events in a very unique and troubling way, one that I never expected to see in my lifetime, the rise of open, aggressive anti-Semitism. We realized that life in our community has changed and that CBI needed to protect itself as never before. The events here and later in Pittsburgh reinforced our belief that we needed to be proactive and to provide both physical and process improvements. In the last couple of weeks, we've understood that the great growth of racism and anti-Semitism and intolerance in general have grown even more than we ever expected. So this project is a timely one. It follows on the project that you all approved 2 years ago, and that has been implemented at CBI, the addition of a fence and other security upgrades in our courtyard. In an effort to provide adequate security, we have been supported with assessments by the Department of Homeland Security and the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. And we've received funding from FEMA for the current project that we are contemplating. I seem to have lost you.
We can still hear and see
We'll
you,
hear you.
Diane.
Yep.
Okay, well, I can't see anyone, but
Oh,
in any case, I'll just keep going then. So the current conditions and the proposed solutions. Bruce Wardell Architects, as you see Bruce is here, and Kareem Habab have both been working on this project with us. The current conditions are that our sanctuary doors at the top of the steps on Jefferson Street are over 100 years old in all likelihood. They currently open inwards, which potentially impedes exit in an emergency. And they are a weak point. They're very difficult to secure against unauthorized entry. And they're also very leaky, whether it be cold or hot air that comes streaming in those very old doors. We plan to replace the doors with recessed outward opening doors that will be similar in design, in the design of the building in the early 1900s. They will be framed with metal door jamb and soffit, and we will extend the landing and railings to enhance safety. Both the courtyard entry doors and the Jefferson, the 3rd Street door, both doors have resulted, the thermal instability, there's a lot of sunshine in the courtyard door and a lot of damp and cold on the Jefferson Street door. And they're warped so that they do not close and secure properly. So we are going to be replacing those doors with doors that are, and Kareem can go into the detail on these doors, but they will close properly behind people as they enter the building. In addition, we will be providing enhanced security glass in and around the doors so that people from the inside can see what's happening, whether anybody is coming and who is coming. Finally, we will be adding electronic surveillance. Right now, as I said, we can't visualize visitors to the sanctuary. And if you're serving as usher and you want to let in only people you want to let in, it's very difficult. You can't see who's at the door. And we'll be adding audio-visual screen at those doors and then additional enhancements so that the office can see who is coming to each of the other 2 doors and decide whether to let them in. That is really the sum total of the project. We hope that the Board of Architectural Review will consider these improvements with an eye to both security and architectural improvement. We've worked hard in partnership with BRW Architects to develop an attractive, historically appropriate, and secure plan to continue to protect Congregation Beth Israel and its entire community of worshipers, students, and visitors. Thank you.
Thanks. Kareem or Bruce, did you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I can quickly go through. I don't know if you want to share our booklet, or Jeff, if you wanted to go through the staff report.
Yeah, we did kind of skip Jeff's.
Yeah, I spoke.
First, or?
Yeah, I was going to say, I spoke briefly at the pre-meeting and let everyone know that the only question that we had left was the resolution of that railing at the top, which your addendum covered. So that sort of strips out the language that I had offered in a way to sort of condition it or have further discussion on. I'm okay with it, and I let the BAR know that. So. I don't have anything more to offer.
Okay, we'll quickly go through these slides. Thank you, Diane, for the introduction. As you can see here, these are some just existing photos in the beginning of the booklet. This shows the sanctuary doors as they are now. I want to reiterate that these doors that are on there are not historic. We don't know exactly when they were installed, but it seems it was like the 60s or 70s. Around that time, Diane might know more about that than I do. And those are the doors that we want to replace. And I guess we can go to the next page. This is an estimate of where we're adding a new step to this landing. And you can see that the edge of that tape measure is where the new step is going to go. And it's going to extend all the way back into where the doors are and slightly into that vestibule. And there are, I think, some more clearer drawings later on in the booklet. That's the interior. When you go into those sanctuary doors, that's what you see on the inside. And these two are the other two doors that we're talking about, the 3rd Street entry and we're calling the Jefferson Street doors, or the lobby entry. And this is a historic photo of what we believe are could be the original historic doors at the sanctuary, which are not what is there now, but you can see the design of them that we'll reference later on. So for the, I guess starting with the 3rd Street door, Diane mentioned the grant to upgrade the security and upgrade the doors. If you look on the left-hand side, that's our sketch of what the new door would look like. It'll have those glass panels at the top to increase visibility. So when you're leaving the space, you can see who's on the other side of the doors. And the design itself takes its cue from the original photograph, the black and white photograph that you saw with the paneling. As for the Jefferson Street entry, they're a little kind of different animal, I guess, on this side of the building. It's part of the newer addition that was built by BRW architects. And the design for those doors references the kind of like Gothic arch shape. If you go a couple of pictures, I think it's like page 5, maybe. I don't know what page it is on here. Slightly up more. Yeah, that one. On the right-hand side, you can see that arch and those windows. So we're referencing that design element into the new design of those doors and adding all those glass paneling so you can see through the doors as well as you're exiting the building. And last but not least, the sanctuary doors themselves. This is the existing plan on the left-hand side. You can see that it is, I guess the way it is now is that the landing itself is inadequate the way it is right now, where the doors open inwards and you have a bunch of little steps right as you open the doors. I think there are some original pictures in the beginning of the booklet that show that condition. Our proposal is to, for egress reasons, have those doors open outwards. And in order to do that, we have to recess the doors in, add a step, and create that landing depth so that we can have those doors open outwards and have people safely exit that building. I would say there was a recent, somewhat recent addition inside the sanctuary space that there's another egress door from inside there that opens outwards for emergency exit, but this door is still used for occasions and stuff like that, that it would be beneficial from a security standpoint that they open outwards. The design of those doors is a direct kind of recall back to that historic photograph with the paneling. The railings, I think Jeff mentioned, at first we were thinking of how to modify the historic railings, but we decided it would be better to leave those alone. And since we're pouring a new concrete landing at the top there and cleaning up all those little steps that exist there and making this flush new landing, we can install new railings at that landing to satisfy the height requirement, since we're adding a new step and raising that level. And I guess the materiality of the doors, you can see this is, I guess, our precedent palette. And the next picture, you can see some kind of schematic renders of what that recess could look like. Since we're pushing the doors back, that created this, saw it as an opportunity with these larger jambs to reference back. If you think of like the materials used in the ecclesiastical doors in big cities, it's this bronze material. In this case, we were thinking of that as the material to go on as the panels and the soffit of this recess, while the doors themselves would be mahogany wood to not, to I guess counteract that. And that's the gist of it. And I have Bruce Wardell here to answer all the hard questions after my presentation.
All right, well, thank you. First, are there any questions from the public? Please use the raise your hand feature or press *9.
I do see a raised hand from attendees named Kent and Schlussel. So I will now allow them to talk. And I think they have 3 minutes. So once I allow you to talk, you have to unmute yourselves.
My name is Kent Schlussel. I'm the chairman of the Congregation Beth Israel Safety and Security Committee. Since 2017, we have had 4 different safety and security inspections of our building and emergency procedures. 2 of these inspections have resulted in written reports and 2 were recommendations passed to us verbally. The written reports were done by Department of Homeland Security, DHS, and by the Secure Communication Network, SCM. The SCM is a North American Jewish Federation organization that has been authorized by DHS and FEMA to conduct security assessments. The verbal reports were done by Charlottesville Police Department in 2019 and by SCM last month to review a proposed plan on the doors. I've also talked to the FBI and the state police about the doors. All these reports were concerned about the physical security and safety of CBI building as occupants. We have done several things inside the building and outside the building. The most noticeable was the courtyard renovation, and we thank the bar for approving this renovation. Now we are continuing to improve our safety and security of CBI. All the inspectors noted the doors, especially the doors leading to the main sanctuary, as a problematic issue for safety and security. FEMA agrees with the analysis concerning the doors to the building, and we were successful in obtaining grant money, as Diane Hillman has stated previously. The other doors, after many years, also need to be replaced to improve both our safety and security procedures. As you can see from our requests, I believe this will not only enhance the beauty of the building, but will improve both safety and security of the building. I urge you to approve this plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the public?
I'm not seeing any other raised hands.
Okay. Questions from the board?
Just curious, do y'all have the original architectural drawings for the building and that you know of, or in the library somewhere or anything?
We have some drawings that were done, I think, when there was an addition prior to the addition that we did in the 1992 to 94. There were drawings that were about 10 years prior to that. And we have those drawings, but I'm not aware of original drawings or any kind of HABs drawings of the building. We've done existing drawings ourselves of the building, but we're not aware of any historic drawings.
Gotcha. Where I was going with that was just, I appreciate y'all's intent to replicate the original front doors and looking to see if there's any way to match some of the molding profiles and details for those doors. So maybe there's some other trim in the building that might lend some clues.
That would be a good idea.
So I have a question for Kareem or Bruce. It appears that the limestone step that is there now outside the door, is it being proposed that that's going to be demolished and replaced with concrete that's going to be part of the extension or include the extension?
Kareem, let's go to that photograph of the top stair if we can.
I don't know if I can share. Okay, there we go.
So if we look at the entire stairway, it is a patchwork of different materials going up. Maybe we can, is there one from the bottom of the stairs? Let's take a look at the one from the bottom of the stairs. So the stairs on the up to the bottom landing are one kind of concrete. The stairs from the bottom of the landing up to the top of the landing are another kind of concrete. And then the sill into the door itself is a kind of stone, I think. Let's go up to the top, that one with the measuring with the tape.
One of your drawings calls it out as limestone.
Yeah, it probably is limestone. And what has to happen is that has to come out to the edge out here for the landing. I think I know where you're going with this question.
Well, it would, I mean, it appears to be part of the original fabric of the building,
yeah,
unless you know otherwise. And it would be a shame to demolish it to create a monolithic concrete step.
Yeah. I think, you know, there might be a way to detail an extension of this, and perhaps even in limestone. We're thinking that once we get beyond this sill, here's one of the issues that we have to deal with. If we can just puzzle through this a little bit, is that once we remove this sill and we recess the doors inside by the 3 feet for each panel, we now have a surface that we have to treat that is an exterior surface. And so what we end up with is this kind of band of stone here, and then a surface inside and a surface outside that are something else. And I think as we were looking at this, we thought the kind of patchwork that would create was.
You're breaking up, Bruce. I'm sorry. It's hard to hear you.
Okay. When can you hear me now?
You're still breaking up.
I think if everybody else besides Bruce would mute themselves, that might help. There's a little bit of feedback.
Oops, and I was talking to Bruce and I was muted. So, sorry.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
I don't know where I dropped out, but when we recess the doors, we end up with an exterior surface that we have to have where those feet are. We have this band of original limestone, and then we have the extended landing that we have to have for the area outside. We met with a code official and looked at these clearances. So what that creates is this kind of 3-part piece of this landing, which I guess we kind of assumed that we wanted that to be homogeneous. As you raise the issue of the kind of original piece of this, you know, there might be a solution where we can keep this, although I'm not sure that the height of it is going to be exactly right. You know, as you kind of make a consistent surface across the entire area. So it's a puzzle, and our initial proposal was to make it a homogeneous surface.
Yeah, and I understand the complications, because I'm sure this existing limestone has some slope to it.
Yeah.
And it may even have some wear in the center of it that makes it not a straight line across the top of the nosing.
Yeah.
But I think you, hopefully you understand my point too, that this is original fabric. And if there's some way that that this is a challenge that you take and just ponder and give it some thought and see if there's a way, maybe a new a piece of slate that covered the whole thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But just give it some thought.
I mean, if there is a way to encase it, so that
yeah, but that'd be better than getting rid of it. At least
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you get pretty thin when you're there right at the threshold.
Yeah,
and,
I understand.
You know, it's one of these things where the kind of ideal concept and the sort of technical solutions kind of fight each other.
Understood. All I ask is that you give it a try.
Yeah, I think point taken, and I think we'll know more when we pull the threshold up and know what's on. You know, we know what's in the framing. You know, it might be possible that we could sort of layer this thing from front, middle, and back, and make them all work together. If we can do that, I think that would be a wonderful solution.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I had another question on this image, and I've been the one drawing. I'll admit it. It was about the same issue, but it was about just noticing and that this portion of the concrete is going to be exposed to the side, and just making sure that it's going to be held back from the edge of the stair, and that we also have enough clearance kind of between that pedestal and the new riser.
Yes. Yeah, and it will be held back, and it will probably be we'll probably put pigment in the concrete to sort of match it a little more closely with the old concrete. You can see even here that this top landing, the existing top landing, is different than the top stair there.
Yeah.
But the orange line is about where the new slab would be. Yes, it would be exposed to the side and would be held away, and the new railing would be anchored in the new concrete.
Right, kind of here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
Tim is in the middle of a question.
Oh.
Bruce, I have a question. The bronze liner, is that going to be, are you going to let that weather, or is that going to be kept?
Well, we're going to let it weather. You know, if you go around any of the larger cities, and any of the kind of main downtown churches and synagogues often have these bronze doors that have the patina on them.
Yep.
There's a manufacturer up in Pennsylvania that will shape those panels so that they will have, you know how you would have a deep jamb in an old house where you'd have the kind of paneling in that.
Yep.
That bronze will have that shape to it, but we will let it weather.
So you're going to actually impress a panel in that, so that's actually not going to be a modern.
That's
not
right.
Read as a modern arch, whatever
Correct.
you want to call it. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
It'll be detailed like the jamb of one of these big old houses, you know.
Right. So ultimately, its color and the wood door are not. They're going to be kind of at least in the same family contrast-wise, I suppose.
Right. The mahogany and the bronze will sort of approach each other.
Yeah.
We'll have to live with it for a year or two being pretty bright.
It's just like a copper roof.
Yeah. Right.
And I presume the panels in the jamb will be aligned with the panels in the door?
I think that's probably right. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I have one other question. The door where Kareem was talking about the arches, is that in the new part of the part you guys?
Yeah, that's in the 1994 edition.
Okay.
And the 1994 edition referenced the arches in the original sanctuary.
Right, but the doors, the original, the doors you built in there were all straight panels.
They were all horizontal, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, well, I'm not seeing any more questions. So are there any additional comments from the public? Please use the raise your hand feature or press *9.
I don't see any raised hands, Carl.
Okay. All right, well, let's move into discussion.
Are we into comments now? So, well, two things. This is really one of my favorite additions in the entire town of Charlottesville. I've always really thought you did a really fabulous job with this. You know, I understand what you're doing with the front door. It's kind of unfortunate because of the loss of the planar nature of it, but I get it. As you might suspect, the one door I'm actually less comfortable with is changing your rectangular door to that more sort of I don't know, it seems just kind of, I don't know, that Gothicization of it doesn't quite fly for me, but I don't know if anybody else feels that way. I like the door that you have. I understand you've got to put some glass in it somehow, but I like your original design better.
It's quiet. I think as far as our guidelines are concerned, I think the the door replacements are fine for the new edition. I think the door replacement for the sanctuary is it's an exception to our guidelines, but I think it's an understandable exception. I think you guys have executed it really well. So personally, I'm in favor of this application. And I think your idea with the the railing solution was really simple. that was nice. I appreciate what Jody was saying with the how do you preserve that limestone tread or threshold, and I do wonder if maybe there's some way that threshold would indicate that you have changed things from the what was original, and maybe being able to still see it and see the joint there might be an indication that yes, this door used to actually be flush with the facade, and now it's it's an indication of the change. That's it for me. I think it's a great project.
Isn't the really tough thing with that, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you actually have to extend that step, Bruce? Isn't that the biggest issue?
Yeah, we're extending it on both sides. On the inside, we've got to get enough depth of substrate to get some kind of stone or masonry surface, because it's an exterior surface and we've got to waterproof it and do all of that kind of stuff. And we've got to do that, going back to the limestone piece, we've got to do that without making a dam, just making a pool, so we've got to get the waterproofing out somehow. And then if we're gonna try and preserve it, then we've got to figure out how to make that a non-movable joint, where it doesn't expand and contract. So there's some solution making that we will do when we pull up the rug and the floor. And we're happy to run something back by you guys when we come up with some crazy idea,
Yeah, it just seems like the heart. I mean, that all sounds like. I mean, particularly what Carl was saying. If you have some sort of a band or reference to the threshold, that pretty much takes care of that aspect of it. I think I don't quite see how you solve it going in the other direction in terms of that piece of stone and adding yet another piece of nosing to it to get out another foot. That's the part that seems to me to be problematic. And meaning
so you're backing yourself. You're backing yourself into the same solution we came to, and that is a monolithic surface. for the whole thing, which unfortunately, you know, it's kind of like a process of elimination. I'm not excluding trying to solve the problem, and it may be some of it may be how that sill is anchored into the rest of the building. You know, is it just laid there? Is it anchored in? We don't know.
Another, I was going to add another issue. We can double check this, but last I checked, that the edge of that sill is not high enough for the code to add that step. We were kind of relying on, because it slopes steeply from the threshold of the doors down to the edge of that sill.
That top step has to be the same as all the rest of the steps.
Yeah, and if you built that and go back, I don't think you'd be going down to hit the top of the edge of that limestone sill instead of, you know, having water rush the other way off of the steps, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just say that I think the biggest challenge of leaving it in situ is waterproofing it and preventing water from getting in and then having freeze thaw issues down the road, causing a lot of damage. You know, the idea of trying to encapsulate it at least preserves it in place, the historic nations. Since I've got the floor, I should have asked this in the questions, forgive me. Y'all have mentioned potentially adding some security cameras and devices, which I think sounds certainly warranted. I didn't know if that's something that BAR normally, Carl, do we normally review that type of thing? You know, you're grimacing, so probably not.
We probably should, but they're the type of thing that just kind of appear.
Yeah, I would just say in my experience working at the university, we often try to position them, you know, not mounted on the building, but rather looking back towards the doors and entrance ways and things like that. So it's not front and center, you know, a camera smack right over the door.
Kareem, you've got a proposal from the folks that are coming, and I think you've talked to them about that in their proposal, right?
Yeah, we actually just met on site today with Diane and the security contractor. I think the working theory right now is that we'll have, you've probably seen those like camera with like a little, it's kind of like a little intercom thing off of on the side of one of the jams, so they can see who's at the door. And that feeds into a screen they have on the interior side of the door that they can look through.
Yeah, those are pretty discreet, which is nice.
Yeah, it's the installation into masonry. And I had a question about a city building where they wanted to do security cameras, and my key concern was that, all right, well, just like we do with signage and things like that, you know, don't bore into the brick, use the masonry joint for your anchoring, and be discreet with your, you know, any type of junction box. So and, you know, I think we don't have that in the guidelines, Chance, but that would be the recommendation if it ever came forward.
Right. I mean, I trust the applicant to do something that fits in well with the building and doesn't detract from the architecture.
Yeah.
I mean, because you could use, you know, a remote camera with a fiber optic cable / and lens, you know, where you really don't see it. I mean, that's just a question of how sophisticated the security company is, what kind of equipment they have. But yeah, it's like thermostats. They always end up in the wrong place.
But Tim, wouldn't that kind of thing also not have an intercom capability, or would it?
Yeah, well, the problem is with the intercom aspect of it, you have to have some sort of a panel for somebody to understand that there's actually an intercom. So once it becomes an intercom, I don't think you have much of a choice.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, you have to have some sort of a panel for somebody to address. So it's really more if you just want a camera that, you know, gives you a secure view and not have it obvious. Yeah, I think that step is going to be a challenge, but
I support the project as it's been detailed. I think it's a really elegant solution to an unfortunate problem in reality. And I think it's worth also saying and thanking Congregation Beth Israel for their continued commitment to taking issues of either expansion or further protection or security and turning it into really elegant design solutions. You've continued to contribute to the architectural character of our city, and we want to thank you for that.
Completely agree.
I don't know how many of you, if you picked it up in the staff report, but you know, the fact that this building had been a block away and was disassembled and moved is really a fascinating story to it. And so one of those, when you talk about, oh, is that original? Well, no, but it really, you know, because it wasn't here, but it really is fascinating. And I know of other churches have done this as well, and it's really interesting. It's like, well, we're gonna move up the street, let's start boxing it up. But it really is a beautiful building, and it's it's fascinating that it's evolved like it has, even from a block down the street.
If you stand in front of the historic facade, you can actually see where they ran out of the brick that they moved from the post office site and finished with a different brick.
Fascinating.
Going up the facade, you can see where that line is going across the facade.
That's great.
Mr. Chair, I have a motion.
Okay.
Having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including the ADC district design guidelines, I move to find that the proposed entrance alterations at 301 East Jefferson Street satisfy the BAR's criteria and are compatible with this property and other properties in the North Downtown ADC district, and that the BAR approves the application as submitted.
Second.
And I didn't put anything in there about the limestone step. I trust that, Bruce, you'll take a look at that, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, not a problem.
Yep. Okay, I'll call a vote. Mr. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mr. McClure?
Yes.
Mr. Zemer?
Yes.
Mr. Gastinger?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Moore?
Aye.
Mr. Lehendro?
Aye.
And Miss Lewis?
Aye.
Thank you. That's a vote of 8-0 to approve the motion.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Let's see, what do I have next?
Good work, Kareem.
We have 116 West Jefferson Street.
Okay.
And before you get started, I heard from Gordon Johnson, and it didn't sound like he was going to be able to attend the meeting, so I don't think there's anyone here to represent the project.
Oh, no.
So I just wanted to let you all know. I told him he could submit me a testimony or anything, but I just didn't hear back from him.
So my recommendation will be to pop ahead to 408 and then come back to 116, recognizing the BAR can defer it. I think it would be helpful to still have a quick discussion on it. It would certainly help us help on the staff's end to if it's not going to be approved, at least know what we can what else we need. So is that any issues with that change?
Does the applicant know that because they didn't appear that we might defer on it? Were they told that?
I told the applicant, they could send another representative, or they could submit a testimony. And in the past, the BAR has reviewed projects without applicants. So I told them that, we could proceed, but I just didn't hear back from them. So.
No, we have, but usually they're pretty simple. And I think this one, well, we'll discuss it at the end. And if we can go forward, we can go forward. But my intuition is we're going to have too many questions.
Okay.
So,
It's in a sense that the clarifications would certainly be even if we were going, if the BAR were to approve it, there would be clarifications that we would certainly want to say, are these okay? So I agree with that. So is Robert available? Robert?
We need some unique names in this town. Too many Jeffs, too many Roberts.
Yeah, I know. It's
I'm not a. I'm still a newcomer though. So
new Robert, tall Robert. Is he available?
Yeah, I've just added Robert Nichols. So.
All right.
Sorry, what are we reviewing now?
408 East Market Street.
Thank you.
And if, oh, there's Robert. Okay, down at the bottom. So this is a COA request for 408 East Market Street. This is the building was constructed in 1946. It is in the downtown ADC district, and it is contributing. And as a note, anything within the downtown ADC district is council designated as contributing, regardless of the age or historic nature. So, however, this one now is 74 years old, so it would be eligible for inclusion in the National Register district. So. What you're reviewing, excuse me, is a request to paint the exterior. There's some false railings above the main entry on those windows, second and third floor. Remove those. There are fabric canopies that will be removed and replaced with at the center entrance with a metal. And someone will have to tell me the difference between a canopy and an awning. There are planters at the entrance that's going to be replaced with new plantings, and the planting to include Boston ivy intended to cover the walls on either side of the entrance there. The paving in front of the that's not in the public right of way, the aggregate exposed aggregate concrete will be removed and replaced with bluestone pavings. The in the discussion, there were some questions that you all had asked, and the applicant has provided that information. There's a section through the canopy which we circulated. The ivy intent is for it to cover the walls, and there will be no railing. The painting above the and particularly in this image here, you see the window set back within. I don't know if that metal, Robert, but above will be painted. Anything that's brick will be painted, and then so my staff's recommendation. No issues with any of the. I'm sorry. So if you see in this image, there was a question about some of the shading that appeared where the blue and the gray. That is all one color, except the brown on that upper story is stay there. Go back up. So the brown you see at the top, yeah, that's roofing material, but the brown above each of those 6 windows, that will be painted blue and in all the same color. And Robert can certainly correct me if I missed anything. As far as all of the components proposed, the staff recommends approval of. We did suggest that the BAR have some discussion about the ivy, and there are 4 criteria from the facades and storefront section of chapter 3 that we thought might be helpful in that discussion. So, and I know we discussed this earlier in the evening at the prior to the meeting, so I think that answers all the questions from our end. If you've got anything, I'm here, and otherwise we can hand this over to Robert, to tall Robert.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. One thing I should say about this project is my office has been asked by the condominium association, essentially the ownership representation of the building, to help them get caught up really with deferred maintenance, and that includes some in the process of getting caught up with maintenance, addressing some style preferences, appearance preferences that they have. and it's led. We've really prepared for them kind of a master plan responding to their preference, to their request that covers quite a number of components of this building, and several of which we're not showing in this application because of they expect them to be phased out over quite a long period of time. And so in the future, we or somebody will be back to you to continue discussing and looking for approval for more extensive work in the side courtyards. To be clear about the scope that Jeff referenced of the terrace paving material, currently the only approval that's being sought is the bit of bluestone that's in front of the entryway and then the two towers, so that middle third of the building. There's nothing in the on the surface of the two flanking courtyards that are recessed that we're asking about in this application. Mostly for funding reasons, things are being spaced out over a number of years, and we're biting off chunks as they think they can manage them. And actually, in the scope we're talking about now, it may even they might need to execute in 2 phases. Although I expect that it would likely come within the approval window, which could somebody remind me? An approval is valid for what period of time?
2 years. Is it 18 months or is it?
It's
either
something
18 months or
short
2 years.
until you get a site plan, and then it's as long as the site plan. So yeah, it's either 18 months or 2 years, something like that.
Yeah. This current image, and this is the correct one to be looking at now, has the paint on we're showing the paint on the exterior of the building, the brick surface being painted, the change in canopy, removal of the current canvas ones, and the introduction of a painted aluminum one with integrated signage. We're also showing the demolition of the 2 raised planters on either side of the door, and that bluestone paving there. And that is indeed the scope that we're seeking approval for, although I think it's pretty likely that given approval for that scope, it would happen in 2 chunks that would include paint and the canopy, and then probably, I don't know what period later, but definitely within that window of approval, that work on the ground to get rid of the planters and start to bring, because there's some work on the interior that's matching it, start to bring that bluestone terrace to the exterior. In the staff report, the issue of ivy was raised, both the kind of, I suppose, the ambiguity or just the non-treatment of it in the guidelines. And I've, both in our own projects and also seen many applications and projects come before the BAR where vegetation comes up. It's interesting also that, you know, there used to be some at the synagogue, and the question comes up whether how to view that, how to assess that as part of a design proposal when it might be less reliable. The permanence of such a thing might be less reliable. The appearance of it may not be exactly what we're showing. We're wary of relying on vegetation that way, and we've taken steps, both talking to horticulturists and looking at other projects where there's been successful use of ivy in this way, and feel pretty good about this. This is a Boston ivy tends to be much more cooperative than an English ivy in that it doesn't find its way into masonry joints or window jambs. And it's also very resilient and a quick grower. I think maybe the main thing we have going for us here is our northern exposure will keep, for the most part, northern exposure, keep us from getting overheated and baked, particularly as the plant is just starting to take hold. And to the best, the association, our clients and the owners of the building, they're very enthusiastic about this design, and they've eagerly planned in their financial planning maintenance to anticipate some work to keep it looking good and also keep it within its bounds. It's intended to remain only on these two flanking towers. The canopy, Jeff, I think I'm sure it's not precise. I think of it as awning as something that's cantilevered off the building. So just like what's currently on the side, maybe, and then a canopy, this is just for the sake of this conversation, a canopy is what's currently on the front where it has some outrigger supports, some outboard supports. So it's essentially supported on four corners, not cantilevered, and is holding a, in this case, a barrel vaulted or arched canvas overhead. We were interested in having less shade, less obscuring of the building, and not having fabric to be a component of the facade of the building. And those are the kind of criteria that have led to the current proposal. The overall geometry of that and the construction of that is explained in the section that Jeff had asked for. And it might be part of a separate document. I sent that as some supplemental pages. The signage, in particular, the lettering on that is not yet clearly defined. And our assumption is that that component in particular would come back before you in the form of or maybe we'd first just go to staff as a sign application. What we're showing here is something that seemed comfortable in terms of general location and proportion, but that's not determined. So Gropin or another sign company, contractor would be before you with the looking at that limited scope of probably lighting and letter height, letter material, that sort of thing. In general, the dark color there's just a number of precedents that caught the eye of both the client and our designers in our office. It's pretty easy to find a lot of nice precedents for that. Even the one thing we referred to a couple of times was the ground intelligence building, which became the S&L building, which became the Standard & Poor's, for a building that was kind of uncharacteristically brutalist for the neighborhood. Feel like that's kind of a local demonstration of a bit of elegance that came to a building just with a coat of paint. And we feel like it could have a similar positive effect on the Macklin building. I think that may be all I have to add to the thorough report. What is he?
All right, well, thank you. Are there any questions from the public? Please use the raise your hand feature or press *9.
I don't see any raised hands, Carl.
Do we even have any public?
No, I don't think so.
All right, questions from the board.
Robert, just to clarify, is the intention is to maintain the two willow oaks on either side of the building, is that correct?
That's right.
Thank you.
Yes, yeah, sorry.
I mean, there's a hope for eventual renovation of the courtyards, but.
We talked about that.
No, okay.
Yeah, I know. I think one of the views we sent didn't have them. And that was to enable
Sure.
a better view of the
I just want
facades.
to make sure.
One thing if we could just look at the elevation again, I just want to make sure that clarification, the question that we made a mistake in where we applied paint color. So it's on the second story, that kind of captured panel that's immediately above the each sliding door pair. Yeah, right in there. Captured within that zone, we're showing what's that dark brown or bronze color, which is intended to represent the painted metal, really the kind of extension of roofing material. And that's an error on our part. That's a brick panel. It doesn't have any metal work on there. So that would be painted just like any, yes, exactly. That would be painted the dark blue violet color.
Any other questions? I can't see any of everyone, so just speak up if you do.
But we're just talking about the two central towers and the awning, essentially. We're not talking about the other sides of the building at this point for painting, or is the whole thing?
No. Painting would be comprehensive. That would be as shown in the renderings. Yeah, and then, so I believe that's the only thing that would be touching the facades on the wings. Demolition of the fabric canopies or awnings on those sides. More work happening in the center with that canopy, and then the demolition of those, what I've been calling false railings there in front of fixed glass above.
But you said you're not proceeding with the bluestone in front of the recessed areas at this point.
Correct. Yeah, that's not part of this application.
It appears to be on the plans that we got. I thought on page.
I thought we were applying for it, but
on page
until next year.
You're numbered 5.
We're on the recess on the flanking side.
Oh, not on the flanking side.
I think there may be a misunderstanding. So it's
okay.
Robert, the bluestone it will go in front of the front door there by the projecting bay, but not in the Sherry. Were you asking about in the recesses?
Recess area. Yes.
That material that we're showing in that rendering is intended to emulate that current aggregated panel.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's move on to comments. I think I know we do not have any public. So comments from the board.
Over the front doorway, is the name of the building, is the existing to remain, or is that being replaced? And I guess the question is, does that fall under our sign guidelines?
Are you specifically asking about the lettering that calls out the name of the building?
Yeah.
I don't, that is kind of, let's call that captured within that bit of the design that I will come back to you in the form of a sign permit application. It's not determined how the building wants to identify itself.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think those actually just go to Jeff and he gets to review them on his own if he wants. Well, okay, I'll go ahead and start. The color seems great. The what you're doing, I think, cleans this up really nicely. I think I'm just fine with the Boston Ivy. I think that's actually beautiful when Boston Ivy is growing on brick, but I guess my concern is, and I know you said that they're going to put in funding to maintain the, its extent, but to do that, it's going to require, a pretty tall ladder or a cherry picker. probably once or twice a year at least. So I think we kind of need to expect that this ivy, once it's fully established, is probably going to start reaching out from the center bay. So I don't know if that's, what other people think, if that's a problem or not. I mean, one solution would be to put a cable system on the brick and find something that doesn't cling to the brick, but instead twines up the cables. Just throwing that out there. I think I'm okay personally with the idea of the ivy on the brick and letting it, with the understanding that it may go a little wild, but I think that's something that we all need to discuss.
The wire strategy was, I think Robert mentioned this, was attempted at Congregation Beth Israel, and it really never took off. I loved the idea when I was last in the BAR when Bruce came before us, and as a way to screen that wall, that fenestrated wall, and add privacy, because that was a learning wing, and it just never took off. So I mean, maybe Breck has some thoughts on this, but I was disappointed, and I think the congregation was too. We all thought that it'd be this beautiful green wall that would provide a little light and have some, not a hardscape, but some privacy as well.
Did it never take off? I thought it took a long time, but I thought at some point
the strings did, but it really never. Some of them were never covered at all.
I'm trying to remember, what exposure was that?
Well, it's the opposite, actually.
It's the opposite. It's mostly southerly.
Yeah.
So it got, as Robert pointed out, it probably got baked. Like, we have ivy on our house, and it's on the north elevation, and I got to cut it back all the time because it's always going bonkers, but it grows just fine. It grows fast. And, I think having the ivy take over a good chunk of that building wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. But I think, I mean, mostly it's a question of maintenance, and not, as Robert was saying, it's less aggressive than the American ivy. Doesn't push as hard as I understand it, but I think it's at the owner's peril in terms of maintaining the building. Just like painting it, they've got to keep after it, make sure it doesn't start growing into places it shouldn't be. But it is modern brick and modern mortar, so I would think it would actually do okay.
Fine with the proposal of the ivy. I think it's a reasonable response. I am a little bit curious if you're providing enough soil volume for the amount of ivy you have coming up from the length of wall that you have shown.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very narrow. And so I think that's just a question of, I don't think you'll get the effect of what's shown in the renderings. I think it'll be much more erratic in its growth pattern.
Breck, solely as a function of soil volume, or you mean just generally, even if in the best of circumstances?
Well, both. Right now, it doesn't look like there's any soil volume on the sides of the tower. And I think that the conditions in those corners will be quite different.
Right.
Than on where there's a little bit more airflow and sunlight. And that'll happen at the top as well, but that's fine. I think the proposal should probably stand on its own with the color, whether or not the ivy is successful or not. And I think either way, it still meets our guidelines and be a big improvement for this building.
I agree. And I also, I definitely agree with Robert about the transformation of the Ninjik building. Just painting that a dark color made an enormous difference the way that building came across. I don't think it's quite as critical with this one, just because it's basically in a street wall, but I still think I think it'll be elegant. I think the Ninjik building, it really made a difference because it was such an object in the field, you know, such a big white block.
it's
Here,
actually-
I think you have a little more latitude.
I think it was red brick, 1950s, government red brick.
I was thinking it was gray. Wasn't it gray
It
for a
was
long time?
painted to gray, I believe. Yeah. I thought it was originally brick, two different types, but I might be wrong.
It might have been, but at some point it was gray. And so it was sort of like the UVA hospital. You can see it, you know, for 30 miles.
Brett, question for you. The switchgrass, is that gonna live? It's kind of shady back here, isn't it?
I mean, it's north facing. It is good at a lot of reflected light. I think it'll be all right. It's not very, if it doesn't succeed, they'll switch it out and put something else in.
Okay.
I
I'm thinking of the
Grass, right?
Switch to a different grass. That's what you just said.
Yeah.
just the stuff in front of Oak Heart Social got kind of ragged looking before they finally took it out.
That's south facing. Well,
yeah, I mean, it's under a bunch of crepe myrtles.
Yeah.
But anyways, throwing that out there. Sounds like everyone's great with this proposal. So anybody want to make a motion? Go for it, Sherry, please.
Having considered the standards set forth within the city code, including the ADC district design guidelines, I move to find that the proposed exterior alterations at 408 East Market Street to the Macklin building satisfy the BAR's criteria and are compatible with this property and other properties in the downtown ADC district. And the BAR approves this submission as submitted.
Second.
Thank you. I'll call a vote. Mr. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Gastinger?
Aye.
Mr. McClure?
Yes.
Mr. Zemer?
Aye, aye, Captain.
Mr. Lehendro?
Aye.
And Miss Lewis?
Aye.
Thank you very much. It passes with a vote of 8-0.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we probably do need to just quickly discuss the Jefferson Street building with the porch, so that when they come back, they've got a little feedback. Does anybody want a quick break right now? Or just want to plow through this?
Can we? I worry that we're going to have the conversation now, and then the next time when the applicant's here, we're going to have the same conversation. Can we just defer this?
I'd like to get some questions taken care of, because that allows me to get this to an approvable submittal.
And you didn't hear, and we didn't talk about that during the pre-meeting? I thought we covered those kinds of things.
I just had some images, and I just wanted to just clarify if I can. But I first want to ask Robert, is anyone signed up to speak on this? It is still advertised.
No, I see Bill Chapman and Mary Terry in the chat. I didn't hear back from Gordon when I emailed him.
Wait, Bill's still here?
I don't think
okay.
he's been paying attention, but
You've had that happen before with others.
yeah, and I just didn't hear back from him. So
Robert, I sent that. I sent you a that PDF in the email. Can you open that up real quick?
Yeah, just give me a bit.
And what I did was I looked at what you all were referring to, some adjacent porches, and so I'm going to use those. They can be helpful examples. I just want to make sure I'm on the right I'm on the right page.
We limit discussion then to Jody's concern. Can we just go quickly through this? So
absolutely, and then you all would have to vote to defer this item. By the way, so can you make that bigger? So what I did, I just went and looked at the structures in the one at 406 Altamont Circle. seems to be the best match. In fact, the medallions, while they're of a different profile, they do align. The columns present themselves. Good catch there. So scroll to the next picture. All right, go that one there. Nope, go back. That's fine, right there. So what I saw in these photographs, and this is what I can offer to the applicant, is the engaged column. We see the round column. We see a column base that representative of probably a similarly aged structure. So I can use these, if you all agree, as details that again, aside from the medallion being different. The other question is about the railing, and if you scroll, Robert, I think I have one of just the railing. There's one more, I think. Yeah, so it's difficult. The two black and white are 116, and then this is the railing at 406. It's hard to say if that's exact, but it looks similar. And again, it does give a at least something that we can present to the applicant of, we're looking for this detail. And then obviously, whatever the dimensions are, we do have dimensions at the other house that I would suggest that they get, some sort of a dimension sketch. The question of the roof, I for one am I agree, yeah, it should be metal standing seam. All right.
It should not be a
and it should be hipped.
Yeah, I agree there. And then gutters and downspouts were similar conditions what we had over in 201 East High. We know here we have a built-in, where the photos suggest a built-in gutter, but a something on the eave would be acceptable, and with a profile, and I'll do that review. So yeah, I was just pointing out there so to make sure, that this on the left, I'm sorry, the right is the medallion at 116, and then the left is at 406. So, we want that medallion match, but it does seem everything else is pretty clear. Floor and steps, wood, the ceiling, are we okay saying a beadboard?
Yeah.
And then he said that did say to me there was going to be a wood frame on brick piers with wood steps, so we've got that knocked out. This is very helpful in me getting to them. This is what the information I need to see, do the homework for us, and bring this back in next week, and we can approve it. Anything else on this one that you all felt strongly one way or another about?
Is it worth just saying a straw poll? Are people supportive of reconstructing this porch if they do it carefully?
I mean, if any of you are opposed to reconstructing it, speak now. I would be helpful, but I am actually very encouraged by them offering to do this. The building seems somewhat empty. And
is anyone opposed to reconstructing the porch?
It's so clearly of that family.
It is, but I will say, if you look at it, and I was staring at it, and I even sent it to Carl, and I said, like, man, look at this wrong. The building is off center. The windows and the center door are off. So, well, and the front door is centered, but the windows are not aligned on either side. So if you stare at it long enough, you're not seeing things. All right, that's very helpful. And then I would propose that someone make a motion to defer, and
I move that we defer this application.
Second.
Okay, I'll call a vote. Mr. Bailey?
Yes.
Mr. McClure?
Yes.
Mr. Zemer?
Aye.
Mr. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mr. Gastinger?
Aye.
Mr. Moore?
Aye.
Mr. Lehendro?
Aye.
And Miss Lewis.
Aye.
Thank you.
Can I ask a totally random question? based on the project, Bob Pineo's project. Did we say wood shutters or did we say PVC shutters?
You said wood.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
Can I see Sherry?
I dissented because I thought the motion didn't include wood shutters. It was
Brett, you made the motion, right?
It did include wood shutters.
Yeah.
Did.
That's why I couldn't
Well,
figure
now,
out
all
why
right, so
Sherry
Sherry-
said,
Check
I
the
couldn't
tape.
figure out why Sherry dinked it. I was like, what?
Sherry, you said you wanted to be like Melanie tonight. Well, she has done that before. I've asked her, Melanie, why did you dissent on that? She's like, oh, I forgot.
I just want to be contrary.
That's what I thought.
I did not hear that in the motion. So, wow, I turned you guys around tonight as the sole woman here.
It's when you read the entire
Thank you.
6,000 words of the window rehab guidelines, that's when you become Melanie. All right, it is 9 o'clock, and I will acknowledge, I thought we would still be here another 2 hours, so I'm pleased. I don't want to belabor anything further.
For the purpose of our minutes, I know that you read the 801 Park Street Award, but Carl, would you mind just reading
Sure.
the rest of the awards?
Sorry. Yeah, so the awards that we awarded for 2020 for Preservation Design Awards, Dairy Central for adaptive reuse and rehabilitation of a historic structure and new construction design. So awarded to Dairy Holdings LLC, which is the owner, Cunningham Quill Architects, Timmons Group, who are the civil engineers, Water Street Studio, landscape architects, and Hurrigan, which is the construction company. The Cork Hotel for adaptive reuse and rehabilitation of historic structures and new construction design, awarded to Cork Charlottesville LLC, architecture firm, which is the architect, and Greg Bleem, landscape architect, and Martin Horn, the contractor. So we already mentioned 801 Park Street for rehabilitation of a historic structure. And we also awarded First United Methodist Church for rehabilitation of the historic steeple and installation of steeple illumination, which is awarded to the First United Methodist Church. William Owens AIA, which is the architect, Mark Schuyler, which is the lighting designer, Waters Craftsman Incorporated, the steeple for steeple repair, and Safeway Electric for the lighting contractor. So congratulations to everyone who got an award.
Thank you so much.
And we'll take care of the details later. Don't have any update on the comp plan regarding the outdoor lighting plan, but I think it was received well, and the consultants have the information. I think just here that yes, at some point in time, I want to bring back the preservation plan. Not tonight. We'll figure that out. We have some additional discussion on the design review, the process that we established. I think Sherry's asked some questions, and we had some other things. I think we'll have that set up for a later discussion, and certainly when maybe we can. If we sense something's going to be a light evening, we can have a conversation about lighting and just in general, and make sure we are all on the same page. And Tim teaches us what we need to know. I did hear back from the folks at the county as far as the courts complex. Will be bringing us some schematic design in April. Talked to Ben Ford with Ryan in Archaeology, and they have been in contact with him about developing a scope of work for some of the archaeology, so that's good to hear. And other than that, I guess I don't know, was there a place meeting, Tim?
There was, but I missed it.
Okay.
And I don't think it's really making a lot of progress at the moment. They're trying to kind of establish who they're working for.
And some of you may know we did get a Chip Boyles, who would the director at the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission, has come on as the city manager for I believe it's a 2-year period to which is good. And I've known Chip a long time, and he's you know, he's got a lot of experience. He actually was the, I think the town manager or the town senior planner at Clemson, town of Clemson. So we always had a lot to talk about. So he's a good guy, and I looking forward to having him. And John Blair, who was the interim city manager and was city attorney, has accepted a job. I think he's going to Stanton for be their town manager or town attorney. You know, we continue to be down some staff in some other places. And with that, Happy New Year, everybody.
One quick thing, Jeff. Could you just briefly revisit what, remember I asked you the other day about the Park Street Bank? I guess the current consensus is that it's safe, but is there anything, is that something we should consider? Because it's not a contributing structure, right?
I thought that I said it is because it is a,
or did I get that wrong? I just wondered.
It's possible. It's I know, or maybe I got it wrong. And then, but just take me a second to find the maps. There is a new use going in there. Somebody had asked about the signage on that building. And there are some other places in town. There's little nooks and crannies that Robert and I have talked about how to best, you know, maybe evaluate.
You're talking about the bank at the corner of High, or sorry,
Old
yeah,
Sun.
High and Park.
Yeah, because I just think that's probably one of the best, you know, buildings of its era around.
And if I recall, it's contributing to our local district, but it is not contributing in the to the National Register district.
So we have demolition review of it. It's
yeah, we do. It's contributing. So it's not on the National Register as as contributing to the National Register district. But the more important thing is, yes, we have review over it, and as far as its demolition goes. In addition to anything that's done to alter it. But I know there's people staying in it, so we're in good shape.
Is there an application coming before us, or what?
No. It's just there was some questions about what kind of signage could be put up there and what were the reviews.
In there, we haven't heard a thing. I'm sorry, my office is 2 buildings down.
So their wealth management group is remaining in the, I guess, east part of the building, and then that part that was the bank is another user has expressed interest enough to ask us what, you know, or at least ask Reed what they need with a sign permit application. So took that as a good sign. Robert had a photo, we forgot to show it, of the Macklin building. It was like last summer, he and I were staring at this image from like 1915. I'm like, where in the world is that?
Well, the building wasn't there. It was
that's right.
It was like a repair shop, an auto repair shop, and you could see the I don't know, whatever the corner, the Market Street Market building, and then the other building that flanks it, and we just couldn't figure out where it was for the longest time. I wish we could find that photo, but maybe next meeting I'll share it.
That's in an email somewhere. So yeah. That's where we stand.
Since you all want to go, I want to talk guidelines, but I'm not going to do that to you tonight. Can you please respond if I send you an email? Just trying to figure out how we're going to tackle this. Thanks.
Yep.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right.
Great.
Good night,
Thank
guys.
you.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night. Happy New Year.
Robert, thank you.
Happy New Year, everybody.
See you.